Hello, dear friends. So glad you could join us at Dark Harry. Today's narrative adventure is titled What If the Addams Family Replaced the Dursleys Before Harry Got His Hogwarts Letter. Dumbledore was horrified we put our heart into every story we share. If you appreciate our work, showing some love with a like and subscribe would make our day. The story begins now. Chapter 1, The Boy Who Lived. With the Addams family, lightning split the sky as 10-year-old Harry Potter Addams stood in the center of the family graveyard, his arms outstretched and face tilted toward the heavens. Rain soaked his wild black hair and plastered his ceremonial black robe to his thin frame. Perfect weather for your Death Day celebration, isn't it, Harry dear? Morticia Addams glided forward, pale fingers caressing the ancient tombstones as she moved. Her black dress trailed behind her, seemingly untouched by the mud and water. Harry grinned, revealing a slightly crooked tooth that the family found utterly charming. Couldn't have asked for better, Mother Morticia. The ancestors must be pleased. Around him, the entire Addams clan gathered in a circle. Uncle Fester, bald head gleaming with raindrops, was lighting black candles with his fingertips. Grandmama stirred a bubbling cauldron that smelled of nightshade and Stranger Things. Gomez Addams puffed on a cigar, the smoke curling oddly against the rainfall, while Wednesday and Pugsley, Harry's adoptive siblings, arranged bleached animal bones in a pattern around Harry. 10 years since you joined our family, Gomez boomed, slapping Harry on the back. 10 years since death decided you were too interesting to keep. Lurch, the family butler, groaned appreciatively from where he held an umbrella over Thing, who was playing a mournful tune on a miniature violin. I remember that night like it was yesterday, Morticia said, her eyes growing distant. Such a magnificent storm. The night baby Harry arrived had been much like this one, thunder crashing, lightning turning the sky into a spiderweb of electricity. Morticia had been in the conservatory, trimming her roses, removing the blooms and arranging the thorny stems in a vase, when a particularly powerful bolt of lightning struck somewhere very near the house. How lovely, she had murmured, moving toward the window. That's when she noticed a basket on their doorstep, visible through the wrought iron gates. Most people avoided the Addams residence, the locals called it the haunted mansion on the hill, so any delivery was unusual. Curious, she had glided to the front door, opening it just as another lightning bolt illuminated the night. In the flash, she saw the basket contained a baby with a curious lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. Gomez, she called without taking her eyes off the child. Come look at what someone's left us. A baby with the mark of lightning. How thoughtful. Gomez bounded down the stairs, rapier in hand from his fencing practice. A baby? Capital. Simply capital. He peered at the infant, who, despite the raging storm, slept peacefully. He's not afraid of the storm, Tish. Look how peaceful he is. He's perfect. Inside the basket was a letter addressed to Petunia and Vernon Dursley of No. 4, Privet Drive. The Addamses had never heard of these people. The delivery person must have made a mistake, Gomez said, reading the letter. Says here his parents were killed. Something about a dark wizard. The boy survived a killing curse. Extraordinary. Survived death as an infant, Morticia murmured, lifting the baby into her arms. What a magnificent start in life. The baby opened his eyes, startlingly green, and instead of crying at the sight of Morticia's pale face in the lightning flashes, he reached up with pudgy fingers toward her. His name is Harry Potter, Gomez read. His mother was Lily, his father James. Potter Addams has a much better ring to it, Morticia decided instantly. They tried, in their way, to find these Dursley people, but their search methods weren't exactly conventional. Grandmama consulted with the spirits, who were notably unhelpful. Fester tried to trace the baby's origins by examining the lightning scar, convinced it was an electrical phenomenon. Lurch drove the ancient family hearse to various neighborhoods asking vague questions that mostly frightened people. After a month with no results, the Addamses decided it was fate. The baby was meant to be theirs. We'll raise him as an Addams, Gomez declared. He already has the pallor for it. And to think, the spirits never once mentioned you were a wizard, Grandmama cackled, bringing Harry back to the present. She poked at her cauldron with a femur bone. Though I had my suspicions when you turned Pugsley's pet spider into a top hat at age 4. Not just any wizard, Fester added, balancing precariously on a tombstone. A famous one. The boy who lived. Harry shrugged. The family had pieced together bits of his history over the years through unconventional research methods, supernatural consultations, and one memorable séance where they'd briefly contacted someone claiming to be his godfather before the connection was mysteriously severed. Being famous for not dying is silly, Wednesday said flatly, finishing the bone circle. Everyone here hasn't died thousands of times. At 12, she was 2 years older than Harry and Pugsley, and never let them forget it. Now, Wednesday, Morticia gently corrected. Harry didn't just not die. He reflected a killing curse. Very impressive magic. Pugsley tossed a small explosive into the cauldron, causing it to belch purple smoke. Can you teach me how to do that, Harry? If I knew how, I would, Harry replied. But I was just a baby. Thunder boomed overhead as the circle was completed. The family took their positions, and Gomez began the ceremony, his voice carrying over the storm. We gather to celebrate 10 years since death spared our Harry and delivered him to our doorstep. 10 years of joyous gloom and delightful doom under the Addams roof. Harry felt a warm glow in his chest as the family proceeded with the ritual. The Addamses might be strange by most standards, but they had given him something precious, acceptance. His peculiarities, from his speaking to snakes to making objects fly when angry, had never been met with fear or disgust, but with delight and encouragement. As the ceremony reached its peak, Harry felt a surge of power within him. The candles surrounding the circle flared suddenly higher, their flames turning green, then blue, then black. The ground trembled slightly. Magnificent! Gomez exclaimed. Your magic grows stronger each year, Morticia observed proudly. When the ritual concluded, the family retreated inside for cake, a masterpiece by Grandmama that resembled a miniature graveyard, complete with cookie tombstones bearing the names of Harry's birth parents. It was the Addams way of honoring them. Inside the vast, Gothic dining room, Harry sat between Wednesday and Pugsley at the long, mahogany table. Lurch served thick slices of the Death Day cake as things scampered across the table, delivering napkins. I think it's time we discussed your education, old man, Gomez said, using his dagger to spear a piece of cake. You'll be 11 soon. Magical schooling awaits. We could continue his home education, Morticia suggested. Grandmama's potion lessons are going splendidly. Boom. Pugsley demonstrated by making an explosion gesture with his hands. And he's shown real talent with my poisonous herbs, Morticia continued. Just last week he correctly identified 17 varieties of deadly nightshade blindfolded. By taste, Harry added proudly. But, Morticia continued, I believe his birth parents attended a formal magic school. Hogwarts, if I recall from that letter. Hogwarts. Gomez perked up. Prestigious institution. Centuries old. Ghosts roaming the halls. Moving staircases. Forbidden forest full of dangerous creatures. Sounds like paradise, Harry? Harry nodded enthusiastically. While he loved learning from his family, Grandmama's potions, Uncle Fester's experiments with electricity that somehow complemented his magical abilities, Gomez's fencing lessons and financial acumen, Morticia's extensive knowledge of poisonous plants and creatures, the idea of attending his parents' school intrigued him. Do you think I'll get a letter? Harry asked. How do they know where to find students? Magic, dear, Morticia assured him. If you're meant to attend, they'll find you. And if they don't, Fester added with a maniacal grin, we'll find them. The following week saw Harry continuing his unusual education with the family. Mornings were spent with Grandmama in her kitchen laboratory, learning the precise way to dice bat wings and the correct temperature for brewing potions in a cauldron that occasionally growled. A good potion should either cure you or kill you instantly, Grandmama instructed as Harry stirred a bubbling mixture. Anything in between is just bad craftsmanship. Afternoons were dedicated to physical training with Gomez, who insisted that magic was no substitute for knowing how to properly fence, box, or throw knives. En garde, Harry! Gomez cried, lunging forward with his rapier in the mansion's grand ballroom. Harry parried, his smaller blade flashing in the light from the cobwebbed chandelier. He'd been fencing with Gomez since he was 6 and had developed quick reflexes and a strategic mind. Good. Excellent. Gomez beamed as Harry executed a perfect riposte. You're a natural, my boy. Your father would be proud. Though the Addamses had never met James Potter, they spoke of him and Lily often, incorporating them into family lore. In the Addams worldview, death was merely a different state of being, not an end. The family regularly attempted to contact Harry's parents through seances, with varying degrees of success. Evenings were often spent with Morticia in the conservatory among her carnivorous plants and rare poisonous specimens. Harry had a particular affinity for snakes, something Morticia found endearing. Parseltongue is such a useful skill, she commented as Harry conversed with a small garden snake. What's it saying, dear? Harry listened to the snake's hissing. He says there's a mouse nest behind the east wall of the cemetery. And he thinks my glasses are shiny. The snake flicked its tongue toward Harry's round spectacles, which had been repaired so many times by the family that they now stayed perfectly in place through what could only be described as magical means. One ear piece had been replaced by a tiny bone, courtesy of Wednesday's collection. Meanwhile, Harry's magical abilities continued to develop in unexpected ways. When Pugsley accidentally dropped a vat of Grandmama's experimental growth potion in the garden, causing the normally well-behaved Venus flytraps to grow to the size of cars and become considerably more aggressive, it was Harry who managed to calm them. How did you do that? Wednesday had asked, watching as the plants bent toward Harry like sunflowers tracking the sun. Harry shrugged. I just asked them nicely to stop trying to eat the mailman. Such incidents were common in the Addams household and always celebrated rather than feared. Accidental magic is a sign of great potential, Morticia assured Harry after he'd accidentally animated all the suits of armor in the main hall during a game of hide-and-seek. Your birth mother had a talent for charms and potions, Gomez added, ducking as a helmet flew past. And your father was supposedly quite the transfiguration expert. How do you know that? Harry asked curiously. The family's knowledge of his parents often seemed to come from mysterious sources. Gomez twirled his mustache. We have our ways, my boy. We have our ways. One evening, as the family gathered in the drawing room for their weekly séance, something unexpected happened. They sat around the circular table, hands linked, as Grandmama chanted in an ancient tongue and candles flickered in response to unseen drafts. Thing acted as medium, tapping out messages on a miniature Ouija board. Harry, seated between Wednesday and Uncle Fester, felt a strange tingling in his lightning scar, something that occasionally happened during these sessions. Suddenly, there was a loud screech from outside, followed by a tapping at the window. Wednesday released Harry's hand and glided to the heavy velvet curtains, pulling them back to reveal a magnificent tawny owl perched on the sill, a letter clutched in its beak. How appropriate, Morticia murmured. A messenger from beyond. Gomez leapt up and flung open the window with typical enthusiasm. Come in, come in. Any creature of the night is welcome in the Addams home. The owl swooped in, dropped the letter in Harry's lap, and perched atop a particularly grim-looking gargoyle statue. Harry examined the envelope, thick parchment, addressed in emerald green ink, Mr. H. Potter, the Eastern Tower bedroom, Addams Manor Cemetery Ridge. It knows which bedroom you sleep in, Wednesday observed with approval. Impressive surveillance. Open it, Harry. Pugsley urged, practically bouncing in his seat. With careful fingers, Harry broke the wax seal, a coat of arms featuring a lion, eagle, badger, and snake surrounding the letter H, and unfolded the parchment inside. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Harry read aloud, his voice growing increasingly excited. Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source, CHF, Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confede, of Wizards. Supreme Mugwump. Gomez repeated, puffing proudly on his cigar. Now that's a title with gravitas. Harry continued reading about acceptance to Hogwarts, term beginning on September 1st, the list of required supplies, and instructions to owl his response no later than July 31st. We must celebrate. Morticia declared once Harry finished reading. Our Harry, following in his parents' magical footsteps. I'll prepare a feast. Grandmama announced, already mentally cataloguing which rare and questionable ingredients to use. I'll set off fireworks. Fester and Pugsley said simultaneously, exchanging gleeful looks that usually resulted in property damage. I'll compose a dirge, Wednesday offered solemnly. And I, Gomez proclaimed, will contact our sources in the wizarding world. We must ensure Harry arrives properly equipped. Only the best for a Potter Addams. Harry clutched the letter to his chest, a mix of excitement and nervousness washing over him. He would be entering a world his birth parents had been part of, a world the Addamses had only glimpsed through their unconventional methods of information gathering. Will I fit in? He wondered aloud, an unusual moment of vulnerability. The family fell silent, exchanging glances. Then Morticia glided to his side, placing her cool hand on his shoulder. My dear Harry, she said, her voice gentle but firm, Addamses never worry about fitting in. The world adjusts to us. We're Addamses, Wednesday said with absolute certainty. We're superior. And you're a Potter too, Gomez added. From what we've learned, they were a force to be reckoned with. You carry two powerful legacies, my boy. Harry nodded, his confidence restored. Whatever awaited him at Hogwarts, he would face it with the strange blend of Potter courage and Addams' eccentricity that made him uniquely himself. In his office at Hogwarts, Albus Dumbledore was having a perfectly ordinary evening reviewing student applications when Professor McGonagall burst through his door without knocking, something she hadn't done in nearly a decade. Albus, she gasped, clutching a piece of parchment in her hand. It's about Harry Potter. Dumbledore set down his quill, giving her his full attention. Has something happened to the boy? The acceptance letters went out today, she explained, still catching her breath. The magical quill that addresses the envelopes, it didn't send Harry's letter to Privet Drive. A cold feeling settled in Dumbledore's stomach. Where was it sent? Someplace called Addams Manor, on Cemetery Ridge. McGonagall handed him the record book. I've never heard of this location, and I've certainly never authorized any change in Harry Potter's residence. Dumbledore paled as he read the address. No, he whispered. It cannot be. Not them. You know these people? McGonagall asked sharply. The Addams family, Dumbledore said, rising from his chair with unusual urgency. They're infamous in certain circles. Old magic, older than Hogwarts itself. They practice arts that blur the line between the magical and the macabre. Are you saying Harry Potter has been living with dark wizards? McGonagall's voice rose in alarm. Not dark in the way you mean, Dumbledore clarified, already moving toward his fireplace. But certainly not what I intended when I placed him with his mother's sister. The Addams family exists in the shadows between the magical and muggle worlds. They follow no laws but their own, acknowledge no authority beyond their family traditions. But how did Harry end up with them? The protection spells you set, I don't know, Dumbledore admitted, looking more disturbed than McGonagall had seen him since the war. But I intend to find out. Immediately. As Dumbledore vanished into the emerald flames of the Fleur network, his mind raced with possibilities, none of them comforting. Harry Potter, raised by the Addams family. The boy meant to defeat Voldemort, brought up in a household where darkness was celebrated rather than feared. It was, Dumbledore thought grimly, potentially catastrophic. Back at Addams Manor, the celebration of Harry's acceptance was in full swing. The family graveyard had been decorated with glowing jack-o'-lanterns, enchanted to float several feet above the ground. Cousin Itt had arrived, bringing with him a collection of musical instruments that played themselves, filling the night air with melodies that were simultaneously beautiful and unsettling. Harry sat on a stone bench beside the mausoleum, watching as Uncle Fester used his unique talents to create spectacular electrical displays between the tombstones. Pugsley and Wednesday were taking turns launching homemade rockets toward the full moon overhead. "A canute for your thoughts?" Morticia asked, sitting gracefully beside him. "Just thinking about my parents," Harry admitted. "Wondering what they'd think about all this." He gestured to the bizarre celebration. "They would be grateful," Morticia said with absolute certainty. "Any parent's greatest wish is for their child to be loved." Before Harry could respond, a crack of apparition split the air, different from the thunder that had been rumbling overhead. A tall figure appeared at the cemetery gates, wearing sweeping robes and sporting a long silver beard. "Ah," Morticia observed calmly. "It seems we have a visitor." The family activities paused as everyone turned to observe the newcomer. Gomez strode forward, cigar in one hand, rapier in the other, ever the hospitable but cautious host. "Good evening," he called. "Welcome to Addams Manor. State your business or prepare to duel." The bearded wizard regarded Gomez with a mixture of wariness and resignation. "I am Albus Dumbledore, headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. I've come concerning Harry Potter." Harry stepped forward, curious about this man who ran the school he would soon attend. "I'm Harry, sir. Harry Potter Addams." Dumbledore's eyes fixed on Harry, widening slightly at the sight of the boy. Harry knew what he saw, a thin boy with untamed black hair and bright green eyes behind round glasses, dressed in a miniature version of Gomez's pinstriped suit, complete with a small cravat. The lightning scar was visible on his forehead, partially obscured by his fringe. "Harry," Dumbledore said softly, "I'm pleased to see you well, though I confess I am surprised by your current living arrangements." "No need for surprise," Gomez declared, slapping Dumbledore on the back with enough force to make the older wizard stumble. "The boy's been with us for nearly 10 years. Come inside, headmaster. We have much to discuss, and Grandmama has prepared a feast in honor of Harry's acceptance to your school." Dumbledore looked as though he might prefer to remove Harry immediately, but good manners, and perhaps a desire to assess the situation more thoroughly, prevailed. "Thank you. I would appreciate the opportunity to talk." As they moved toward the mansion, Dumbledore leaned down to whisper to Harry. "Are you happy here, my boy?" Harry looked up at him with genuine confusion at the question. "Of course. They're my family." Inside the mansion, Dumbledore was led to the dining room, where he took in the Gothic architecture, the mounted swords and shields, the portraits whose eyes seemed to follow him with more animation than even magical paintings should possess. Grandmama's feast was laid out on the long table, dishes that Dumbledore didn't recognize and wasn't entirely sure he wanted to identify. Lurch pulled out a chair for him with a low groan that might have been welcome. Once everyone was seated, with Harry between Morticia and Wednesday, Dumbledore cleared his throat. "I must ask, how exactly did Harry come to live with you?" "He was meant to be placed with his mother's sister and her family. Found him on our doorstep during a magnificent storm," Gomez explained, carving what might have been a roast but had too many legs for Dumbledore's comfort. "The letter mentioned these Dursley people, but we couldn't locate them through our usual methods. Seances are so unreliable these days," Grandmama added, ladling something purple into Dumbledore's bowl. "You've raised him all this time?" Dumbledore asked, looking increasingly troubled. "As if he were born in Addams," Morticia confirmed. "Though we've always honored his Potter heritage as well. We've made quite the study of wizarding culture, in our way." Dumbledore's eyes swept over Harry again, noting details he'd missed in the cemetery, the boy's straight posture, his clear, unflinching gaze, the subtle confidence in the way he handled his cutlery. There were no signs of abuse or neglect, quite the contrary, Harry appeared to be thriving. "I see," Dumbledore said slowly. "And his magical education thus far?" "Oh, we've covered the essentials," Gomez said proudly. "Potions with Grandmama, herbology with Morticia, astronomy on the Widow's Walk, history through family archives. And combat training," Wednesday added flatly. "Harry can throw a knife from 50 paces and hit a moving target." Dumbledore nearly choked on whatever he'd just swallowed. Combat training? For a 10-year-old? Self-defense is essential, Gomez insisted. The boy has enemies, after all. This Voldemort character, for instance. The casual mention of the Dark Lord's name made Dumbledore's eyebrows rise. "You speak his name freely." "Fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself," Harry said, quoting one of Morticia's frequent teachings. A strange expression crossed Dumbledore's face, something like reluctant approval. "That is, quite wise, actually." The dinner continued, with Dumbledore cautiously sampling dishes while observing the family dynamics. Despite their eccentricities, things scurrying across the table to refill glasses, Fester lighting candles with his mouth, Pugsley attempting to launch peas at the chandelier with a spoon, there was an undeniable warmth in their interactions with Harry. After the meal, Gomez suggested they retire to the drawing room for cordials and conversation. Dumbledore followed, still processing what he was witnessing. "I confess," he said once they were settled in high-backed chairs before a crackling fire, "this is not what I expected to find when I learned of Harry's whereabouts." "What did you expect, Professor Dumbledore?" Harry asked directly. "I placed you with your aunt and uncle for specific reasons," Dumbledore explained carefully. "There are protective magical measures that activate through blood relationship." "Ah, blood magic." Grandmama perked up. "One of my specialties. Very powerful stuff." "We've established our own protections," Morticia assured him. "The Addams family has centuries of experience in warding and defensive magic. Our methods may be unconventional, but they're quite effective. No one with ill intent toward Harry has ever crossed our threshold," Gomez added. "Well, no one who left in the same condition they arrived, at any rate." He chuckled darkly. Dumbledore looked deeply concerned. "Have there been attempts to harm Harry?" "Just one," Wednesday said. 3 years ago. A man with strange energy approached Harry in the village cemetery. Felt like a ghost but wasn't quite, Harry explained. He tried to touch me, but the family rings protected me. He held up his hand, showing several odd-looking rings on his fingers, heirlooms from both the Potter and Addams vaults. "The rings burned him," Pugsley added with relish. "He screamed and disappeared. It was great." Dumbledore leaned forward, suddenly alert. "Can you describe this man?" Harry shrugged. "Pale. Nervous. Had a weird smell. Like garlic, but also something dead." The headmaster's expression grew grave. "I believe you may have encountered a servant of Voldemort, perhaps the Dark Lord himself in a weakened form." "Told you so," Wednesday said to Pugsley. "You owe me a tarantula." "This is precisely why I'm concerned about Harry's safety," Dumbledore pressed. "Voldemort will return, and when he does, he will seek out Harry to finish what he started." "Good," Harry said simply, causing Dumbledore to stare at him. "I'd like to meet the man who killed my parents. Properly, this time." The calm, matter-of-fact way the boy said this sent a chill down Dumbledore's spine. "Harry has been raised to face his fears," Morticia explained, mistaking Dumbledore's expression for confusion. "In the Addams family, we don't hide from darkness, we embrace it, understand it, and master it. That philosophy may work for common fears," Dumbledore said carefully, "but Voldemort is a different matter entirely." "Is he?" Gomez questioned. "A man so afraid of death he shattered his soul to avoid it. Sounds like someone who could have benefited from an Addams upbringing himself." Dumbledore blinked, startled by Gomez's casual reference to Horcruxes, a subject so obscure and dark that most wizards didn't know of their existence. You know about soul fragments? Grandmama interrupted. Common enough concept in certain ancient practices. Messy business, though. Unstable. The point is, Morticia redirected smoothly, Harry has been raised with love, as his parents would have wanted, and with knowledge that will serve him well at Hogwarts and beyond. Dumbledore looked at Harry again, seeing him with new eyes. This was not the malleable, innocent boy he had expected to find, eager for guidance and desperate for affection after years of neglect. This Harry Potter had been loved, unconventionally, perhaps, but thoroughly. He had been educated, prepared, made confident. It was, Dumbledore realized with a mixture of alarm and reluctant admiration, both better and worse than he had planned. I see I have much to reconsider, he finally said. Harry will, of course, still attend Hogwarts as his parents intended. But perhaps we should discuss certain arrangements. Such as? Gomez asked. Holiday accommodations, for one, Dumbledore said. And preparation for Harry's inevitable entry into wizarding society. He is something of a celebrity, you understand. Harry made a face. For not dying. That's still silly. Dumbledore couldn't help a small smile. Perhaps, but it's the reality you'll face. People will have expectations of the boy who lived. Harry will be himself, Morticia said firmly. We've never encouraged him to be anything else. A commendable philosophy, Dumbledore conceded, though it may make his transition to Hogwarts more interesting. As the evening wore on, plans were made for Harry's school preparation. Dumbledore, despite his initial horror, found himself drawn into the Addams family's unusual but undeniable charm. By the time he prepared to leave, he had agreed to several compromises he never would have considered hours earlier. Standing once more in the cemetery, under a moon that seemed to hang lower and larger than was natural, Dumbledore addressed Harry directly. I look forward to seeing you at Hogwarts, Harry. I believe you will surprise us all. I usually do, Harry replied with a small smile. After Dumbledore disappeared with another crack of apparition, Gomez turned to his family. What did you think of the professor, Harry? Harry considered for a moment. He's hiding something. Several somethings, I think. But his eyes were kind, even when he was worried. A man of secrets, Morticia observed. How intriguing. Do you think he'll try to separate us from Harry? Wednesday asked, a rare note of concern in her typically monotone voice. He can try, Pugsley said, patting the small explosive device he always carried in his pocket. No one will separate us, Harry assured them. I'm a Potter Addams. Both, always. As the family returned to their celebration, Harry couldn't help wondering what awaited him at Hogwarts. Whatever it was, he would face it as he'd been taught, with curiosity instead of fear, with confidence instead of doubt, and with the absolute certainty that being different wasn't just acceptable, in the Addams family, it was required. In his tower bedroom later that night, surrounded by artifacts collected over his years with the family, a shrunken head that occasionally gave advice, a collection of interesting bones and stones from the graveyard, books of both Addams and Potter family history, Harry wrote his acceptance letter to Hogwarts. The tawny owl had remained, perched on a gargoyle-shaped bedpost, watching him with intelligent eyes. I hope they're ready for me, Harry told the owl as he attached his response to its leg. Because I'm definitely ready for them. The owl hooted once, as if in agreement, before soaring out the tower window into the night. Albus Dumbledore sat in his office at Hogwarts, a glass of fire whiskey in hand, still processing what he had witnessed at Addams Manor. The boy was not what he had expected, not damaged by neglect as he might have been with the Dursleys, but perhaps shaped in ways equally concerning. Harry Potter had been meant to arrive at Hogwarts humble and malleable, eager for guidance. Instead, he would arrive confident, already trained in magic Dumbledore didn't fully understand, raised by a family that operated outside the normal constraints of both Muggle and magical society. What have I done? he murmured to Fawkes, who watched him from his perch. Or perhaps, what has been done in spite of me? The phoenix trilled softly, a sound that usually brought comfort but tonight served only to remind Dumbledore of how little control he had over the situation. His carefully laid plans had been derailed 10 years ago when Harry Potter somehow ended up on the doorstep of perhaps the only family stranger than the Dursleys. Yet he couldn't deny what he'd seen, a happy, healthy boy, loved by his adoptive family, unafraid of the challenges ahead. Was that not what he claimed to want for the child? Dumbledore took another sip of fire whiskey. The boy who lived had been raised by the Addams family. The wizarding world had no idea what was coming. Neither, Dumbledore suspected, did Voldemort. Chapter 2, Diagon Alley and the Hogwarts Express. The last week of August found the Addams family gathered in the mansion's grand foyer, preparing for their expedition to Diagon Alley. Harry bounced on his heels, reading through his supply list for the dozenth time while Gomez consulted a strange, shifting map that occasionally emitted puffs of smoke. "Are we ready, family?" Gomez called out, pocketing the map in his pinstriped suit. "Our portal awaits." "Portal?" Harry perked up. "I thought we'd be using Flo powder like Professor Dumbledore mentioned." Morticia glided down the grand staircase, Wednesday and Pugsley trailing behind her. "Flo networks are monitored by the Ministry, darling. The Addams family prefers more private methods of travel." "We're taking the door," Wednesday informed Harry with one of her rare almost smiles. Harry's eyes widened. The door was legendary in Addams family lore, a mystical portal in the mansion's east wing that supposedly connected to various locations throughout the world. Harry had never been allowed to use it before. "Really? The door? You think I'm ready?" "You're an Addams," Pugsley said, punching Harry's arm affectionately. "And a Potter. Double the magic. Of course you're ready." Uncle Fester bounded in, carrying what looked suspiciously like a shrunken human head in a bag. "Shopping list," he announced. "Grandmama needs fresh ingredients that aren't on Harry's school list." "Remember, we're focusing on Harry's supplies today," Morticia gently reminded him. "Your errands for Grandmama's experiments can wait." "But the shrunken heads are having a 2-for-1 sale," Fester protested. "Last time we brought back a shrunken head, it wouldn't stop singing show tunes for a month," Wednesday deadpanned. "I liked that head," Harry said. "It taught me to waltz." Lurch appeared, carrying several empty trunks for their anticipated purchases. He groaned questioningly. "Yes, Lurch, you may come too," Morticia assured him. "We'll need someone to carry Harry's new cauldron." Thing skittered up Harry's arm to perch on his shoulder, clearly expecting to join the expedition. "The whole family, then," Gomez declared jubilantly. "To Diagon Alley, Addams style." They processed through the mansion's winding corridors to the east wing, where a seemingly ordinary door stood at the end of a long hallway. Unlike the other doors in the house, this one wasn't adorned with gargoyles or covered in spiderwebs. It was plain, unvarnished wood, almost suspiciously ordinary in the otherwise Gothic surroundings. Gomez stepped forward, producing an ancient key from his pocket. "The door has been in the family for 12 generations, he told Harry as he inserted the key. "Created by great-grandmother Addams during the witch trials. A handy escape route, originally. And now it's connected to Diagon Alley?" Harry asked. "The door connects to wherever we need it to," Morticia explained. "It's bound to the family magic. And today, we need it to connect to a wizarding shopping district in London," Gomez said, turning the key. The door creaked open, revealing not the dusty storage room that usually lay beyond, but a swirling vortex of purple and black energy. Strange whispers emanated from the portal, speaking in languages Harry didn't recognize. "Ladies first," Gomez gestured grandly to Morticia. She stepped forward without hesitation, disappearing into the vortex. Wednesday followed, then Pugsley, Fester, and Lurch, each vanishing with varying expressions of delight. "Your turn, my boy." Gomez clapped Harry on the shoulder. Just step through with purpose. The door responds to confidence. Harry took a deep breath and stepped forward. The moment he crossed the threshold, he felt a curious sensation, as if he were being turned inside out and back again. The whispers grew louder, swirling around him, and for a split second, he thought he heard his name called in a woman's voice, a voice that seemed hauntingly familiar. Then, abruptly, he was standing in a narrow, cobblestone alley between two brick buildings. The rest of the family waited ahead, perfectly composed as if they hadn't just traveled through a dimensional portal. Behind Harry, the door stood independently in the middle of the alley, connected to nothing. As Gomez stepped through and closed it, the door shimmered and vanished. "We'll call it back when we're ready to return," Gomez explained, noticing Harry's questioning look. Harry was about to ask how exactly one called back a vanishing door when he became aware that they had an audience. Several wizards and witches had stopped to stare at the family who had appeared from nowhere, without using apparition or any other recognized form of magical transportation. "I believe we've arrived at the junction of Nocturne and Diagon alleys," Morticia observed, looking around at the dark shopfronts nearby. "How convenient. Nocturne Alley is that way," nearby which informed them, pointing down a shadowy side street while eyeing the family warily. "Respectable folk stick to Diagon." She hurried away before anyone could respond. "Respectable," Uncle Fester repeated, looking disappointed. "How boring." "We'll explore both," Gomez decided. "But first, Gringotts Bank. Harry needs access to his vault, and I should check on the Addams investments as well." They moved as a unit toward the gleaming white building at the far end of Diagon Alley, drawing stares with every step. It wasn't just their method of arrival that attracted attention, it was everything about them. Morticia's elegant black dress with its tentacle-like tendrils sweeping the cobblestones, Gomez's anachronistic pinstriped suit and wild-eyed enthusiasm, Wednesday and Pugsley's matching funeral-appropriate attire, Fester's deathly pallor and manic grin, Lurch's towering, grunting presence, and things scampering visibly across Harry's shoulders. And in the middle of it all walked Harry Potter, looking perfectly at home among the strange procession. His lightning scar was partially visible beneath his unruly black hair, causing whispers to follow in their wake. "Is that Harry Potter? Who are those people with him? They can't be his family, they look like dark wizards, if you ask me." Harry caught snippets of the whispered conversations and found them more amusing than offensive. The Addamses had always taught him that others' fear or disapproval was their problem, not his. "You're causing quite the stir, Harry dear," Morticia noted with approval. "Fame suits you." "It's not me they're staring at," Harry replied. "It's all of us." "As it should be," Gomez declared. "Ah, here we are, Gringotts." The goblin guards at the entrance to the bank straightened as the Addams family approached. To Harry's surprise, they bowed deeply, more deeply than he'd seen them bow to other entering wizards. Inside the vast marble hall, the family approached the nearest available teller. The goblin looked up and did a double take, his eyes narrowing with recognition. "Mr. Addams," the goblin acknowledged with unexpected respect. "It has been some years since an Addams visited our London branch." Too long," Gomez agreed heartily. "Dragclaw, isn't it? How's the family? Still collecting cursed gemstones?" The goblin, Dragclaw, actually smiled, revealing pointed teeth. "We are indeed. My youngest just cursed her first diamond." "Excellent. You must be proud." Gomez turned to his family. "The Dragclaws are distant cousins on my mother's side. Fine goblins, excellent taste in curses." Harry stared in amazement. He'd read enough about the wizarding world to know that goblins rarely showed warmth toward wizards, yet here they were, treating his family like respected relatives. "We're here on two matters," Gomez continued. "First, young Harry needs access to his vault. Harry Potter, or Potter Addams as we call him." The goblin's gaze shifted to Harry, lingering on his scar. "Mr. Potter. We've been expecting you for some time." He looked at a ledger. "We have the Potter family vault and a trust vault established for your schooling. And I'd like to check on the Addams investments," Gomez added. "Particularly our joint ventures with the Goblin Nation." Of course, Dragclaw snapped his fingers, summoning 2 more goblins. "Griphook will take Mr. Potter to his vault. Nagnock will handle the Addams portfolios." Harry looked uncertainly at his family. He'd never been separated from them on an outing before. "Go on, Harry," Morticia encouraged him. "This is part of embracing your Potter heritage. We'll meet you in the lobby afterward." "Can Thing go with me?" Harry asked. The disembodied hand gave an encouraging thumbs up from his shoulder. Dragclaw shrugged. The Potter vaults have no restrictions against unusual companions. With a final nod to his family, Harry followed Griphook toward one of the many doors leading off from the main hall, Thing clinging to his jacket. The cart ride that followed was exhilarating, twisting, turning, and plunging through the underground tunnels at breakneck speed. Harry whooped with delight at each death-defying drop, while Thing clung to his ear, clearly enjoying the ride as much as he was. "Your trust vault," Griphook announced as they finally screeched to a halt before a door numbered 687. The goblin unlocked it to reveal mounds of gold, silver, and bronze coins. Harry had grown up with the Addamses' casual attitude toward their considerable wealth, but seeing his own inheritance was different, a tangible connection to his birth parents. "My parents left me all this?" he asked quietly. "This is merely your trust for schooling," Griphook informed him. "The Potter family vault contains more substantial assets, but you cannot access those until you reach majority." Harry nodded, filling a money pouch with galleons, sickles, and nuts. As he worked, Thing helpfully pointed out coins that had rolled into corners. "Thank you," Harry told the goblin when they returned to the lobby. "That was the most fun I've had all week." Griphook looked startled, then offered a small, toothy smile. "Most wizards find the carts unsettling." "I'm not most wizards," Harry replied with a grin. The rest of the family was waiting, Gomez looking particularly pleased. "Excellent news, Harry. The Addams investments are thriving, particularly our stake in that dragon sanctuary in Romania. Shall we continue our shopping?" Their first stop was Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. The moment they entered, the shop assistant took one look at the assembled Addamses and nearly dropped her measuring tape. "Hogwarts for the young man?" she asked faintly. "Indeed," Gomez confirmed. "Only the best for our Harry." Madame Malkin herself emerged from the back of the shop, her professional demeanor only slightly rattled by her unusual customers. "Stand on the footstool, dear," she directed Harry. "I'll have you measured in a jiffy." As Harry stood being fitted for his school robes, another boy was led to the footstool beside him. The boy had a pale, pointed face and white blonde hair slicked back from his forehead. "Hello," the boy said. "Hogwarts too?" "Yes," Harry replied. "First year?" "Same. My father's next door buying my books and mother's up the street looking at wands." The boy had a bored, drawling voice. "Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one and I'll smuggle it in somehow." Harry thought of Wednesday and Pugsley, who regularly attempted to smuggle explosives and weaponry into their local village school. "Smuggling's easy if you know the right concealment charms." The blonde boy looked at him with new interest. "You know concealment charms already? Who are your people?" "My family's all pure blood. The name's Malfoy, Draco Malfoy." "Harry Potter Addams," Harry introduced himself. Draco's eyes widened, darting to Harry's forehead. "Potter? Are you really? And what's Addams?" "I don't know that wizarding name." "It's my adoptive family," Harry explained, nodding toward the front of the shop where the Addamses were examining the display of dress robes with alarming intensity. Morticia was suggesting alterations to a horrified shop assistant, who was discovering that Mrs. Addams wanted the hemlines more ragged and the sleeves, reminiscent of a bat's wing. Draco stared at them, his pale face growing even paler. "Those are your family?" "Yes," Harry said proudly. "They raised me." "But they look like," Draco seemed to struggle for words. "Like what?" Harry asked curiously. "Like they practice the dark arts," Draco finally whispered, a strange mixture of fear and admiration in his voice. Harry laughed. "The Addamses practice all sorts of magic. They don't really categorize it as dark or light, the way most wizards do." Draco looked simultaneously intrigued and unsettled. "My father says there's no such thing as dark magic, only power and those too weak to seek it." "Interesting perspective," Harry mused. "Uncle Fester says there's no such thing as dark magic, only magic that makes bigger explosions." Before Draco could respond, Madame Malkin declared Harry finished. "That's you done, dear." Harry hopped down from the footstool. "See you at Hogwarts, I suppose," he said to Draco. The pale boy nodded slowly. "Yes, looking forward to it, Potter Addams." Next, they visited the apothecary, where Morticia's expertise immediately became apparent. She examined the ingredients with a critical eye, occasionally making suggestions to the shopkeeper about optimal harvesting times for certain plants. "These asphodel roots are subpar," she informed the increasingly nervous man. "They should be gathered under a waning moon for potency in sleep potions." "And these bat spleens," Grandmama chimed in, having joined them specifically for this part of the shopping trip. "Much too dry. Barely suitable for beginner potions." The shopkeeper, recognizing genuine expertise when he heard it, began pulling out his premium stock. "Perhaps Madam would prefer these imported specimens?" "Much better," Morticia approved. "Harry will need quality ingredients if he's to excel in potions." Harry's cauldron was soon filled with the finest potion ingredients available, along with several additions not on the standard first-year list that Morticia and Grandmama insisted would be useful. Their visit to Flourish and Blots created another minor sensation when Gomez began enthusiastically fencing with a display of self-writing quills, and Wednesday asked the shocked clerk where they kept their books on advanced curses and creative hexes. "For academic purposes," she added solemnly when the man hesitated. "We'll need all the standard first-year texts," Morticia smoothly interjected, handing over Harry's book list. Harry, meanwhile, had wandered deeper into the store, drawn to a section on magical creatures. He was thumbing through a volume on rare serpents when a bushy-haired girl about his age approached. "Are you going to Hogwarts too?" she asked briskly. "I'm collecting additional reading materials. The standard texts seem rather basic if you ask me." "Yes, first year," Harry replied, amused by her businesslike manner. "Finding anything good?" "Oh yes." The girl's face lit up. "I've got modern magical history, the rise and fall of the dark arts, and great wizarding events of the 20th century. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way." Harry Potter Addams, he introduced himself, now accustomed to the widening eyes that followed. "Are you really?" Hermione asked excitedly. "I've read all about you. You're in several of these books, you know." "Am I?" Harry was genuinely curious. "What do they say?" "Well, about how you defeated you-know-who as a baby. How your parents were killed, but you survived with just that scar. Nobody knows how you did it." She peered at his forehead with scholarly interest rather than the usual awe. "I was just a baby," Harry shrugged. "I don't remember it." "That's why I'm reading everything I can," Hermione continued. "My parents are Muggles, you see. It was ever such a surprise when I got my letter." "Harry dear, we're ready to continue," Morticia called from the front of the store. Hermione turned to see the assembled Addams family and blinked rapidly. "Are those your relatives?" "My family," Harry confirmed. "I was adopted after my parents died." "Oh." Hermione seemed momentarily flustered. "Well, they seem interesting." Harry grinned. They are. See you on the train, Hermione. Their next destination was Ollivander's, the wandmaker's shop. The narrow, dusty shop seemed to vibrate with strange energy as the family crowded inside, setting off a small silver bell. "Good afternoon," came a soft voice from the shadows. An old man emerged, his wide, pale eyes shining like moons in the gloom. "Mr. Ollivander." Gomez greeted him like an old friend. "Splendid to see you again." Gomez Addams, the wandmaker said slowly. 13 inches, blackthorn with a thestral tail hair core. Unusually powerful for combat magic. "You remember?" Gomez beamed. "I remember every wand I've ever sold," Ollivander said, before his gaze shifted to Morticia. "And Morticia Frump, as you were then. 12 3/4 inches, you with a vampire bat heartstring. Excellent for subtle curses." His eyes finally landed on Harry. "And Harry Potter. I've been expecting you." As Ollivander began the process of finding Harry a wand, the shop seemed to grow more crowded with the wandmaker's intensity and the family's eager observation. Wand after wand was placed in Harry's hand, only to be snatched away almost immediately. "Tricky customer," Ollivander muttered, seeming more delighted with each failure. "Not to worry, we'll find your perfect match." The pile of rejected wands grew. Uncle Fester, growing impatient, began examining the wands himself, causing several boxes to emit sparks or small explosions when he touched them. "Uncle Fester," Morticia gently admonished, "remember what happened the last time you borrowed a wand?" "That village was already on fire when I got there," Fester protested. "Perhaps." Ollivander hesitated, then reached for a dusty box on a high shelf. "I wonder." He presented Harry with another wand. "Holly and Phoenix Feather, 11 inches, nice and supple." The moment Harry's fingers closed around it, he felt a sudden warmth. He raised the wand and brought it swishing down, sending a stream of red and gold sparks from the tip like a firework. "Oh, bravo!" Ollivander cried. "But curious, very curious." "What's curious?" Harry asked. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand gave another feather, just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar." A hush fell over the Addams family, a rare occurrence. "You mean Voldemort's wand?" Harry asked directly. Ollivander flinched at the name. "The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. I think we must expect great things from you. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great." "How fascinating," Morticia murmured. "A connection through twin cores. Does this mean Harry and this Voldemort fellow can't duel properly?" Gomez asked practically. "That could be inconvenient." Ollivander stared at the Addams patriarch. "That is, an unusually astute observation, Mr. Addams. Twin cores can produce unpredictable effects when forced to battle one another." "We'll need to work on wandless magic then, Harry," Gomez decided. "Always have a backup plan in a duel." They left Ollivander's with Harry's new wand and continued their shopping expedition. By late afternoon, they had acquired all the required supplies plus several additions the family deemed essential, a set of throwing knives that Gomez insisted were traditional for wizarding students. They weren't, a miniature carnivorous plant from Morticia that she promised would keep watch while you sleep, and a curious mechanical device from Uncle Fester that he claimed would make electricity work around magic. It actually caused small, localized thunderstorms. Their final stop was the magical menagerie, where Harry hoped to find a pet. The shop was crowded with cages containing all manner of creatures, from ordinary cats and owls to more exotic specimens. "May I help you?" asked the witch behind the counter, eyeing the family warily as Wednesday peered into a cage of poisonous snails with obvious delight. "Harry needs a familiar," Morticia explained. "Something suitable for a young wizard of his lineage." "Well, owls are most practical," the witch began. "They carry mail and, we have our own mail system, Gomez interrupted. Carrier bats, primarily. Much more reliable at night. Harry wandered through the shop, drawn to a dark corner where a glass terrarium sat apart from the other displays. Inside was a sleek, emerald-green snake with unusual silver markings along its spine. "Hello," Harry hissed softly in Parseltongue, a skill he discovered years ago while helping Morticia in the conservatory. The snake raised its head, tongue flicking out. "A speaker. How unexpected. What kind of snake are you?" Harry asked. "Magical viper. Rare. Venomous. They keep me separate because I frightened a small child last week." The snake sounded rather proud of this accomplishment. "I want this one," Harry called to the shopkeeper, who was currently trying to dissuade Pugsley from purchasing a box of doxy eggs. The witch hurried over. "Oh no, dear, that's not a suitable pet for a student. That's an Argentinian magical viper, venomous and temperamental. I keep it for specialty collectors." "He's perfect," Harry insisted. "He just told me he's rare." The witch's eyes widened. "You spoke to it? You're a Parselmouth." "A what?" Harry asked. "Someone who can speak to snakes," Morticia explained, appearing at Harry's side. "It's a rare gift, dear. Considered quite controversial in some circles." "Why?" Harry asked, genuinely confused. "It's just another language." "Precisely our view," Morticia agreed. "The snake will come with us." Despite the shopkeeper's continued protests, the Addams family left with the viper, which Harry named Sylvester, along with a specialized habitat and care instructions. The witch threw in a container of mice for free, seemingly eager to see them leave. Controversial indeed, Gomez chuckled as they exited. Speaking to snakes. Next they'll say brewing potions is controversial. "It's getting late," Morticia observed, looking at the darkening sky. "We should return home and prepare for Harry's departure tomorrow." Gomez pulled out an ancient pocket watch. "You're right, my dear. Time to call the door." They made their way back to the narrow alley between Nocturne and Diagon where they'd arrived. Gomez removed the strange key from his pocket and held it up, turning it in midair as if inserting it into an invisible lock. With a sound like distant thunder, the door materialized before them. "After you, family." Gomez gestured grandly, and one by one, the Addamses stepped through the portal, Harry going last with his new snake's terrarium carefully cradled in his arms and his other packages shrunk and stored in his pockets, courtesy of a discreet charm from Morticia that skirted the edges of the underage magic restrictions. As Harry stepped through, he heard again that ghostly woman's voice calling his name, slightly clearer this time. He hesitated, trying to make out the words that followed, but Gomez's hand on his shoulder gently urged him forward, and the moment was lost. The door closed behind them, and they were home. Platform 9 3/4 bustled with activity as families bid farewell to students boarding the Scarlet Hogwarts Express. Trunks were loaded, owls hooted in their cages, cats wooned between people's legs, and parents delivered last-minute advice and reminders. Into this ordinary chaos stepped the Addams family, emerging not from the barrier between platforms 9 and 10, but from a service door that, moments before, had been marked out of order. "The door is getting quite a workout this week," Gomez observed cheerfully as they stepped onto the platform. "But nothing's too good for Harry's big day." Harry pushed his trunk on a trolley, with Sylvester's habitat secured on top. The snake was mostly hidden beneath a black cloth, as Morticia had suggested this might be more tactful than openly displaying a venomous reptile. The family drew the now familiar stairs as they made their way down the platform. Wednesday and Pugsley walked on either side of Harry, glaring at anyone who looked too long at their adoptive brother. "Remember, you can come home for the Halloween and Yule celebrations if you wish," Morticia reminded Harry. "Professor Dumbledore has approved special arrangements. And if anyone gives you trouble," Pugsley added, "I packed some of my special firecrackers in the false bottom of your trunk." "And a few basic poisons," Wednesday said. "Nothing lethal." Unfortunately. Now children, Gomez admonished, Harry won't need those. He's got his wand, his knife set, and his natural Addams charm. He turned to Harry. But if you do need more supplies, just send word with Sylvester. Snakes don't usually carry mail, Father Gomez, Harry pointed out. Nonsense. With the right encouragement, anything is possible. Gomez pulled out a pocket-sized book titled 101 Unusual Uses for Familiar Animals, and pressed it into Harry's hands. They found an empty compartment near the end of the train, and Lurch loaded Harry's trunk with effortless strength. Thing had insisted on accompanying Harry to Hogwarts and was currently hiding in his pocket, having promised to stay out of sight except in emergencies. It's almost time, Morticia said softly, an unusual catch in her voice. She knelt to Harry's level, straightening his already perfect tie. Remember who you are, Harry. Both Potter and Addams. Both are worthy legacies. I will, Mother Morticia, Harry promised. Right often, she continued. Cousin ITT has loaned us his owl for the school year, since you insisted on taking a snake instead. And if you need anything, Gomez added, anything at all, just let us know. I can be in Scotland in 3 hours by broomstick, 2 by thestral, or instantly by door if the situation calls for it. And I've packed extra socks, Grandmama added, patting his cheek. Enchanted to warm your feet when the dungeons get cold. Dungeons? Harry asked. Well, you never know where you'll end up, dear, she cackled. The whistle blew, signaling the train's imminent departure. Last hugs were exchanged, Festus nearly crushing the breath from him, Lurch's surprisingly gentle. We're so proud of you, Morticia said, kissing his forehead right over his scar. Your parents would be too. Both sets. Harry boarded the train as the final whistle sounded, leaning out the window to wave as the Hogwarts Express began to move. The Addams family stood out starkly on the platform, black-clad and solemn amid the colorful crowd, yet waving with genuine enthusiasm. As the train rounded a bend and the platform disappeared from view, Harry settled back in his seat, a mixture of excitement and nervousness bubbling in his stomach. He was on his way to Hogwarts at last. He'd just begun setting up Sylvester's habitat on the seat beside him when the compartment door slid open. A tall, thin boy with red hair and freckles stood in the doorway. Anyone sitting there? He asked, pointing to the seat opposite Harry. Everywhere else is full. Go ahead, Harry invited. The boy sat down, casting a curious glance at the cloth-covered container next to Harry. He seemed about to ask about it when 2 identical red-headed boys appeared in the doorway. Hey, Ron, said one. We're going down to the middle of the train, Lee Jordan's got a giant tarantula down there. A tarantula? Harry perked up. What species? Is it venomous? The twins looked at him with new interest. Friend of yours, Ron? One asked. We just met, the younger redhead, Ron, explained. Fred and George Weasley, the twins introduced themselves simultaneously. Harry Potter Addams, Harry replied. All 3 Weasleys stared at him, eyes automatically flicking to his forehead. Are you really? Said one twin, either Fred or George, Harry couldn't tell yet. Wicked, said the other twin. And did you say Potter Addams? As in the Addams family? Harry nodded, surprised they recognized the name. Dad's mentioned them, Fred, or George, explained. Works at the ministry. Says they're the only family with more rumors about dark magic than the Malfoys, but without the politics. We're not dark, Harry corrected. Just, differently aligned. The twins grinned identically. Even better, they said together. See you later, then, said one, and they left, closing the compartment door behind them. Are you really Harry Potter? Ron blurted once they were alone. Harry Potter Addams, Harry corrected gently. But yes. And have you really got, you know? Ron pointed at Harry's forehead. Harry pushed back his bangs to show the lightning scar. Wicked, Ron breathed. So that's where you know who, Voldemort, Harry supplied, causing Ron to flinch. Sorry. The Addams family doesn't believe in fearing names. The Addams family, Ron repeated. So you were raised by them? Dad says they're unusual. We prefer eccentrically gifted, Harry said with a grin, relaxing as he realized Ron wasn't going to immediately judge him. So what's it like? Ron asked eagerly. Living with them? Harry considered the question. Normal for me, I guess. We live in a mansion with a graveyard. My sister Wednesday collects poisons. My brother Pugsley builds explosives. Uncle Fester can light bulbs with his mouth. Grandmama brews potions that can raise the dead. Just regular family stuff. Ron's eyes had grown progressively wider. That's mental, he finally said, though he sounded more impressed than alarmed. Harry shrugged. What's your family like? This launched Ron into a description of the Weasley clan, 6 brothers, 1 sister, all magical, living in a house called the Burrow. His father worked at the Ministry in the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts office, which Harry found fascinating. Muggles are so creative, Harry observed. Uncle Fester collects their electrical devices and tries to make them work with magic. Usually ends in explosions, but that's half the fun. As they talked, the cloth covering Sylvester's habitat shifted slightly. Ron pointed at it nervously. What's in there? My familiar, Harry said, pulling back the cloth to reveal the glass terrarium. Inside, Sylvester was coiled on a heated rock, his emerald scales gleaming in the sunlight from the window. This is Sylvester. He's an Argentinian magical viper. Ron paled. You brought a snake to Hogwarts. The letter said a cat, toad, or owl, or another small animal, Harry pointed out. Sylvester is small. Well, for his species. But it's venomous, isn't it? Ron asked warily. Only if he bites you, Harry assured him. He promised not to bite anyone unless I tell him to. Ron looked like he wasn't sure whether to be more concerned about the venomous snake or the casual implication that Harry could communicate with it. Before he could decide, the compartment door slid open again, and a smiling, dimpled woman asked if they wanted anything from the trolley. Harry, eager to try wizarding sweets, bought some of everything, while Ron mumbled something about having sandwiches. When Harry saw Ron's embarrassment, he immediately suggested they share everything. Mother Morticia always says food tastes better when shared with friends, Harry said, dumping his haul onto the empty seat. Ron's mood brightened considerably at this arrangement, and he helped explain the various wizarding treats to Harry, chocolate frogs with collectible wizard cards, every flavor beans, which Harry found fascinating after biting into a grass-flavored one, and pumpkin pasties. Grandmama makes something similar to these, Harry commented, examining a cauldron cake. But hers usually move a little when you cut into them. They were deep in conversation about Quidditch when the compartment door slid open yet again. The bushy-haired girl Harry had met in Flourish and Blot stood there, already wearing her new Hogwarts robes. Has anyone seen a toad? A boy named Neville's lost one, she said in a bossy sort of voice. No toads here, Ron replied. Just a venomous snake. He gestured to Sylvester's terrarium. Hermione's eyes widened as she recognized Harry. Harry Potter Addams. We met in the bookshop, remember? Hello again, Hermione, Harry greeted her. She sat down uninvited, her attention captured by Sylvester. Is that an Argentinian magical viper? They're incredibly rare. How did you get one as a pet? He asked for me, Harry replied honestly. Hermione gave him a skeptical look before turning to Ron. And you are? Ron Weasley, he mumbled through a mouthful of chocolate. Pleasure, she said briskly. I've been asking around about the houses. I hope I'm in Gryffindor, it sounds by far the best, I hear Dumbledore himself was in it. Ravenclaw wouldn't be too bad though. What house do you think you'll be in? Ron asked Harry. I'm not sure, Harry admitted. The Addams family didn't attend Hogwarts, so we don't have a traditional house. Surely you've read about the houses? Hermione pressed. It's all in Hogwarts, a history. I've read it, Harry confirmed. But knowing the descriptions and knowing where I'll fit are different things. The conversation was interrupted when the compartment door opened once more. 3 boys entered, the pale boy from Madame Malkin's, flanked by 2 larger, thuggish-looking students. Is it true? The pale boy asked. They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter is in this compartment. So it's you, is it? Harry Potter Addams, Harry corrected again, beginning to tire of the repetition. And yes, we met at Madame Malkin's. This is Crabbe and Goyle, the boy said casually, indicating his companions. And my name's Malfoy, Draco Malfoy. Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snigger. Draco Malfoy looked at him. Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford. He turned back to Harry. You'll soon find out some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter Addams. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. He held out his hand to shake Harry's, but Harry didn't take it. I appreciate the offer, Malfoy, Harry said coolly, but the Addams family has an old policy about allowing others to choose our friends for us. We call it the sudden disappearance rule. The last person who tried doesn't visit anymore. Or anywhere, really. An uncomfortable silence followed this statement. Draco's hand remained extended for a moment longer before he slowly withdrew it, his pale face flushing slightly. I'd be careful if I were you, Potter, he said slowly. Unless you're a bit politer you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them either. Harry stood up, causing Sylvester to hiss warningly from his terrarium. Something in Harry's expression made all 3 boys step back. My birth parents died fighting against oppression, Harry said softly. The Addams family considers that the most noble death possible. We celebrate their sacrifice every year. The deadly calm in his voice, so reminiscent of Morticia at her most threatening, caused Draco to pale further. And as for politeness, Harry continued, the Addams family belief is that true politeness means being honest about your intentions. So let me be polite to you, Draco Malfoy, I don't respond well to threats, especially ones made against my family, either of my families. Crabbe and Goyle looked uncertainly at Draco, clearly unaccustomed to someone standing up to them so directly. You think you're so special because of that scar, Draco sneered, trying to regain his composure. But you're hanging around with Weasleys and mudbloods already. Pathetic. The temperature in the compartment seemed to drop several degrees. Harry didn't raise his voice, but there was a dangerous edge to it when he spoke again. I think you should leave now, he suggested. Before I introduce you to some Addams family hospitality. As if on cue, Sylvester rose in his enclosure, spreading a hood that he technically shouldn't have had as a viper, and hissed loudly enough to be heard through the glass. Is that a magical viper? Draco asked, his voice cracking slightly. Would you like to pet him? Harry asked with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'm sure he'd love to meet you. The 3 boys retreated hastily, slamming the compartment door behind them. That was brilliant. Ron exclaimed once they were gone. Did you see his face? Even Hermione looked impressed, though she quickly tried to hide it. That word he used, mudblood, that was an insult, wasn't it? A really foul name for someone with non-magical parents, Ron confirmed grimly. Someone like you. Only the worst sort use it. People fear what they don't understand, Harry said, repeating one of Morticia's frequent observations. The Addams family gets called much worse. How did you make your snake do that? Hermione asked curiously. That species doesn't normally hood like a cobra. Harry shrugged. Sylvester's special. He deliberately avoided mentioning his Parseltongue abilities, sensing it might be better to keep some things private for now. The rest of the journey passed more pleasantly. Hermione stayed, her initial bossiness softening as they talked about what to expect at Hogwarts. Ron shared his knowledge of the wizarding world, while Harry contributed occasional anecdotes about growing up with the Addamses that left his new friends equal parts horrified and fascinated. As darkness fell and the train began to slow, they changed into their school robes. Harry carefully placed Sylvester's terrarium in a specialized pouch Morticia had enchanted for easy transport. "Will they really let you keep a venomous snake in the dormitories?" Hermione asked worriedly. "They will if they know what's good for them," Harry replied with a small smile that made Ron and Hermione exchange glances. A voice echoed through the train, "We will be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes' time. Please leave your luggage on the train, it will be taken to the school separately." As they joined the crowd thronging the corridor, Harry felt a curious mixture of excitement and apprehension. The Addams family had prepared him as best they could, but he was about to enter a world that was as much his birthright as his adoptive heritage. The train slowed to a stop at a tiny, dark platform. As they stepped out into the cold night air, a lamp bobbed above the heads of the students, and a booming voice called, "Fur's years. Fur's years over here." The giant man holding the lamp introduced himself as Hagrid and led them down a steep, narrow path to the edge of a great black lake. There, a fleet of small boats awaited them. "No more and 4 to a boat," Hagrid called. Harry, Ron, and Hermione climbed into one boat, joined by the round-faced boy who had lost his toad. As they glided across the smooth, glass-like surface of the lake, Harry trailed his fingers in the dark water, wondering what creatures might lurk beneath. Then, as they rounded a bend, they got their first sight of Hogwarts Castle, perched atop a high mountain, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, turrets and towers reaching toward the heavens. "It's beautiful," Hermione whispered. "It looks like home," Harry murmured, thinking of the Addams mansion with its Gothic spires and ancient stonework. After docking in an underground harbor, they climbed a flight of stone steps to a huge oak door. Hagrid raised his gigantic fist and knocked 3 times. The door swung open immediately. A tall, black-haired witch in emerald-green robes stood there, her stern face reminding Harry a bit of Wednesday when she was judging someone's worthiness to live. "The Fur's years, Professor McGonagall," said Hagrid. "Thank you, Hagrid. I will take them from here." She led them through the entrance hall, a vast space that even Harry, accustomed to the grandeur of Addams Manor, found impressive, and into a small chamber off the hall. Professor McGonagall explained about the sorting ceremony and the 4 houses, emphasizing that their house would be like their family while at Hogwarts. "I already have a family," Harry whispered to Ron. "2, actually." When McGonagall left them to prepare, nervous chatter broke out among the first years. Various theories about the sorting were exchanged. Ron's brother had mentioned wrestling a troll, which Harry thought sounded quite reasonable by Addams standards. "It's probably just the hat," Harry commented to the group at large. "An enchanted artifact that reads your personality and places you accordingly." Several students stared at him. "How do you know that?" a sandy-haired boy asked. Harry shrugged. "It was in Hogwarts, a history. Plus, Grandmama has a similar hat at home that insults your fashion choices." Before anyone could respond to this odd statement, something happened that made several people scream. About 20 ghosts had just streamed through the back wall, pearly white and slightly transparent, deep in conversation. While the other first years reacted with shock or fear, Harry's face lit up with delight. "Actual visualization manifestations," he exclaimed. "The Addams family seances never produce such clear results." A ghost wearing a ruff and tights noticed the first years and smiled. "New students. About to be sorted, I suppose." Harry stepped forward confidently. "Yes, sir. I'm Harry Potter Addams. May I ask how long you've been deceased?" "The manifestation quality is remarkable." The ghost looked taken aback. "Nearly headless Nick, at your service. And I've been dead for several centuries." "Fascinating," Harry said sincerely. "You must have so many stories." I'd love to hear about your death sometime, if you wouldn't mind sharing. Nick appeared simultaneously flattered and confused by Harry's enthusiasm. Well, that's refreshing. Most living people don't like to discuss such matters. The Addams family believes death is just another state of being, Harry explained. We celebrate it rather than fear it. The conversation was cut short by Professor McGonagall's return. She ordered the ghosts away and instructed the first years to form a line. As they walked into the great hall, Harry was only partially focused on the enchanted ceiling and floating candles. His attention was equally captured by the ghosts scattered among the house tables. Think of the seances we could hold here, he murmured to himself. At the front of the hall, Professor McGonagall placed a four-legged stool and a pointed wizard's hat, patched, frayed, and extremely dirty. Harry nodded in satisfaction at being proven right. To the astonishment of many first years, the hat twitched, a rip near the brim opened wide like a mouth, and it began to sing. Harry listened with interest to its description of the four houses, wondering where he might fit. When the song finished, Professor McGonagall stepped forward with a long roll of parchment. When I call your name, you will put on the hat and sit on the stool to be sorted, she said. Abbott, Hannah. One by one, students were called forward and sorted. Harry watched as Hermione was placed in Gryffindor, causing Ron to groan beside him, and Draco Malfoy was instantly sorted into Slytherin. Then, finally, Potter, Harry. As Harry stepped forward, whispers broke out across the hall. He approached Professor McGonagall and said politely but firmly, "It's Potter Addams, Professor." McGonagall's eyebrows rose slightly, but she made no comment as Harry sat on the stool. The last thing he saw before the hat dropped over his eyes was the entire hall craning to get a better look at him. Said a small voice in his ear. Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent, oh my goodness, yes, and a thirst to prove both your legacies. But where to put you? I'd like to go where I can best grow into both my Potter and Addams heritage, Harry thought. Both heritages, the small voice mused. Fascinating upbringing you've had. The Addams family hasn't sent a child to Hogwarts in centuries, not since they withdrew from mainstream wizarding society. They've given you unusual perspectives, unusual magics. Harry waited patiently as the hat seemed to deliberate. You could be great in Slytherin, the hat suggested. They would appreciate your unique approaches to magic. But would they appreciate my muggle-raised sister or my blood-traitor friend? Harry thought back. Loyalty too. Hufflepuff values that. But no, your ambition and courage are too pronounced. Better be Gryffindor. The hat shouted the last word to the entire hall. Harry removed it and walked toward the Gryffindor table, where he received the loudest cheer yet. Percy the prefect shook his hand vigorously, while the Weasley twins yelled, "We got Potter Addams! We got Potter Addams!" Harry sat down opposite a ghost in a ruff, the same nearly headless Nick he'd spoken to earlier. The ghost patted his arm, giving Harry the sudden, horrible feeling he'd been plunged into ice-cold water. Fascinating sensation, Harry commented, causing Nick to look at him strangely again. When Ron joined him at the Gryffindor table minutes later, Harry felt a sense of satisfaction. His first day in the wizarding world was going well, he'd made friends, encountered interesting creatures, including ghosts, and been sorted into his birth parents' house while still maintaining his Addams identity. As the feast appeared before them, an impressive spread even by Grandmama's standards, though lacking in some of her more exotic ingredients, Harry glanced up at the staff table. His eyes met those of Professor Dumbledore, who raised his goblet slightly in acknowledgement. Next to Dumbledore sat a sallow-faced, hook-nosed teacher with greasy black hair who was staring at Harry with an expression somewhere between shock and loathing. As their eyes met, Harry felt a sharp pain in his lightning scar. Ouch, he clapped a hand to his head. What is it? Asked Percy Weasley. Nothing, Harry said, the pain fading as quickly as it had come. Who's that teacher talking to Professor Dumbledore? That's Professor Snape. He teaches potions, but everyone knows he's after the defense against the dark arts job. Knows an awful lot about the dark arts, Snape does. Harry continued to watch Snape throughout the feast. The professor's gaze returned to him several times, each look calculating and intense. I think I'm going to have an interesting year, Harry murmured to himself, stroking the pouch where Sylvester rested. Very interesting indeed. Chapter 3, Sorting and Revelations. Harry woke before dawn on his first morning at Hogwarts, the unfamiliar silence of the Gryffindor dormitory striking him as odd. At Addams Manor, he typically awoke to the sound of explosions from Pugsley's room, Wednesday's knife-throwing practice, or Uncle Fester's electrical experiments gone wrong. The peaceful stillness felt almost unnatural. He slid out of his four-poster bed and opened Sylvester's habitat, which he'd placed on his nightstand despite some nervous objections from his dorm mates. Good morning, Harry hissed quietly in Parseltongue. How are you finding Hogwarts? The emerald snake uncoiled lazily, tongue flicking out to taste the air. Cold. Old magic here. Smells interesting. Just don't bite anyone unless they attack me first, Harry reminded him, stroking the smooth scales with one finger. As we agreed, Sylvester replied, sounding almost disappointed. Though that red-haired one kept staring at me last night. Rude. Harry glanced at Ron's bed, where his new friend was still sound asleep, snoring softly. He's just not used to snakes as pets. Things scampered out from under Harry's pillow, giving him a thumbs up before pointing at the window, where dawn light was just beginning to break over the distant mountains. Good idea, Thing. Let's explore before everyone wakes up. Harry dressed quickly in his school robes, tucking his wand into his sleeve the way Gomez had taught him for quick access. He slipped Sylvester into the special pocket Morticia had sewn into his robes, expanded on the inside with an undetectable extension charm, warm and dark, perfect for a snake to hide comfortably. With Thing riding on his shoulder, concealed by his collar, Harry crept out of the dormitory and down the spiral staircase to the Gryffindor common room. First day of classes, Mr. Potter Addams, a voice asked as he reached the bottom step. Nearly headless Nick floated near the fireplace, his pearly form glowing softly in the dim morning light. Just Harry, please, he replied with a smile. And yes, first day. I thought I'd get the lay of the land early. A wise precaution, Nick approved. Hogwarts can be confusing for newcomers. Moving staircases, vanishing steps, doors that aren't really doors. Sounds like home, Harry said with genuine fondness. The Addams mansion has a corridor on the third floor that's only there on Tuesdays, and a bathroom that occasionally tries to eat visitors. Nick blinked, momentarily lost for words. You had an unusual upbringing, didn't you? The best, Harry confirmed. Would you mind showing me around a bit? I'd love to hear more about the castle's history, especially the more macabre aspects. The ghost brightened considerably. Most students find my death stories boring, but if you're truly interested. Absolutely. The Addams family believes a good death story is the highest form of entertainment. This marked the beginning of one of the strangest castle tours in Hogwarts history. Nearly headless Nick guided Harry through the still sleeping halls, pointing out secret passages, trick stairs, and the locations of particularly gruesome historical events. 14 students perished in this very corridor during the Goblin Rebellion of 1612, Nick informed Harry as they walked along a fourth-floor passage. Wonderful architecture for a massacre, Harry observed, admiring the narrow confines and lack of escape routes. Great Aunt Lacrimosa would approve. By the time other students began stirring, Harry had gained a comprehensive knowledge of the castle's layout, a dozen new ghost stories to write home about, and nearly headless Nick's eternal friendship, sealed when Harry asked, with genuine curiosity rather than mockery, to see exactly how, nearly headless, the ghost really was. Most refreshing attitude I've encountered in centuries, Nick told him as they returned to the Great Hall for breakfast. Do visit me if you need anything, young Addams. Potter Addams, Harry corrected gently. And I definitely will. The great hall was filling with sleepy-eyed students as Harry took a seat at the Gryffindor table. Ron joined him minutes later, hair disheveled and tie askew. "Where were you?" he yawned. "Woke up and you were gone." "Just exploring with a new friend," Harry replied, helping himself to sausages that reminded him of Grandmama's cooking, though considerably less likely to wiggle on the plate. Professor McGonagall moved along the Gryffindor table distributing course schedules. When she reached Harry, she paused. "Mr. Potter Addams," she said, the hyphenated name still sounding unfamiliar on her lips, "Professor Dumbledore requests that you join him briefly in his office after breakfast. The password is, Acid Pops." "Am I in trouble already?" Harry asked with genuine curiosity. That would be a new record, even for an Addams. The corner of McGonagall's mouth twitched in what might have been a suppressed smile. "Not at all. The headmaster simply wishes to discuss some administrative matters regarding your unique situation." After she moved on, Ron looked at Harry with wide eyes. "Blimey, first day and already summoned to Dumbledore's office? What did you do?" "Exist, apparently," Harry replied, buttering his toast. "The Addams effect in action." Hermione slid into a seat across from them, already clutching several textbooks to her chest. "I've been in the library since 6, she announced without preamble. "Did you know Hogwarts has over 47,000 books? Including some that are chained up in the restricted section because they're too dangerous." "Dangerous books?" Harry perked up. "Like Great Uncle Forsyth's compendium of questionable curses? Wednesday's been trying to steal that from Father Gomez's study for years." Hermione stared at him. "You say the strangest things, Harry." "Wait until you meet my family," he replied with a grin. After breakfast, Harry made his way to the gargoyle guarding the headmaster's office, leaving Ron and Hermione to head to their first class with promises to catch up soon. "Acid Pops," he told the gargoyle, which sprang aside to reveal a moving spiral staircase. Riding it upward, Harry found himself before an impressive oak door with a brass knocker. Before he could use it, a voice from within called, "Enter, Harry." The office beyond was fascinating, circular, filled with strange silver instruments that emitted puffs of smoke, shelves of books, and portraits of elderly witches and wizards who peered at him with undisguised curiosity. A magnificent red and gold bird perched near the desk, watching Harry with intelligent eyes. "Good morning, Professor," Harry greeted Dumbledore, who sat behind the desk, his long silver beard tucked into his belt, blue eyes twinkling behind half-moon spectacles. "Good morning, Harry. Thank you for coming. I trust you slept well." "Very well, though it was strangely quiet. No explosions, no screams, no thing playing the harpsichord at midnight." Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. "Indeed. Well, I'm pleased to hear you're settling in, despite these privations." He gestured for Harry to sit in the chair opposite his desk. "I wanted to discuss a few matters regarding your unique upbringing and circumstances here at Hogwarts." Harry nodded, aware of things shifting slightly under his collar. "First," Dumbledore continued, "Professor McGonagall informs me that you've brought a rather unusual familiar, a venomous snake." "Sylvester," Harry confirmed. "He's very well behaved. Only bites on command." Dumbledore's expression flickered between concern and something like reluctant amusement. "While the traditional letter specifies an owl, cat, or toad, there is actually no strict rule against other familiars, provided they pose no danger to the student body." "He won't be a problem," Harry assured him. "The Addams family has a strict code about when it's appropriate to poison someone. Mainly limited to mortal enemies, door-to-door salespeople, and anyone who insults Grandmama's cooking." "How reassuring," Dumbledore murmured. "Nevertheless, I must ask that you keep him securely contained when not in your dormitory." "Of course, Professor." Dumbledore steepled his fingers. "The second matter is more delicate." "Your name?" "Potter Addams," Harry said firmly. "Yes. While I understand your attachment to your adoptive family, officially, in our records and in the eyes of the magical world, you remain Harry James Potter. I'm both, Harry insisted, his green eyes, so like lilies, flashing with sudden intensity. The Addams family took me in, raised me, loved me. I won't deny either part of my heritage. Dumbledore studied him for a long moment. I see Morticia's influence in your conviction, he finally said with a small smile. Very well. Unofficially, among your peers and professors, you may use Potter Addams. The official records will remain Potter, but I understand the importance of honoring both your bloodlines. Harry nodded, satisfied. There is one more thing, Dumbledore added, his tone growing more serious. As you know, your survival as an infant made you famous in our world. The story of how you defeated Voldemort is well known. Except nobody knows how I actually did it, Harry pointed out. Precisely. And there are those who would be, intensely interested in you because of this. I must urge caution, Harry. Your safety is paramount. The Addams family has taught me plenty about self-defense, Harry assured him. Both magical and otherwise. Yes, I imagine they have, Dumbledore sighed. Which brings me to my final point. The magic practiced by the Addams family is, unconventional by mainstream wizarding standards. Some might even call it dark. They don't distinguish between dark and light magic, Harry explained. Just useful and not useful. Or as Uncle Fester puts it, magic that makes things explode and magic that doesn't try hard enough. Dumbledore's lips twitched again. While I appreciate such, pragmatic categorizations, at Hogwarts, you will be taught the standard magical curriculum. I ask that you refrain from practicing any more esoteric magic you may have learned at home, at least without supervision. I understand, Harry said, though he had no intention of abandoning the special techniques Grandmama had taught him for identifying poisonous plants, or Gomez's lessons on duel-enhancing charms. As if reading his thoughts, Dumbledore fixed him with a penetrating look over his half-moon spectacles. Hogwarts offers many opportunities to expand your magical education, Harry. But some paths, once taken, are difficult to return from. The Addams family motto is, Sic gorgiemus allos subjectados nunc, we gladly feast on those who would subdue us, Harry replied. They taught me to embrace my power, not fear it. Dumbledore sighed again, more heavily this time. You may go, Harry. You wouldn't want to be late for your first class. Harry stood, but hesitated before turning to leave. Professor? Why did you leave me with the Dursleys originally? The letter said they were my mother's sister's family, but you never checked if I got there safely. A shadow passed across Dumbledore's face. A mistake, Harry. One of many I've made. I believed you would be protected by blood wards there, due to your mother's sacrifice. The Addams family created protection wards too, Harry said. Blood magic, but willingly given. Every Addams contributed, even cousin ITT, though his blood has an unusual consistency. Dumbledore's eyes widened slightly at this casual mention of what most would consider extremely dark magic. I see. We will discuss this further another time, Harry. For now, you should join your classmates. As Harry descended the spiral staircase, Thing poked out from his collar and tapped his cheek questioningly. Yes, Thing, Harry whispered. He's definitely hiding something. But I don't think he means harm. His eyes are too sad for someone plotting anything truly nefarious. Harry's first week at Hogwarts proved to be an exercise in containing his Addams-influenced magical instincts while navigating the conventional wizarding curriculum. In Transfiguration, Professor McGonagall demonstrated her animagus abilities by transforming into a cat and back again. Impressive, Harry commented when no one else reacted. Great Aunt Enervalia could transform into a murder of crows, all at once. Made family dinners very messy. McGonagall fixed him with a penetrating stare. Transforming into multiple animals simultaneously is impossible, Mr. Potter Addams. Not impossible, Harry corrected politely. Just highly inadvisable if you want to keep all your original parts when you transform back. The class had stared at him in a mixture of horror and fascination, reactions Harry was thoroughly accustomed to from his public school days before Hogwarts. Charms with tiny Professor Flitwick was less eventful, though when taking roll call, the diminutive professor gave an excited squeak at Harry's name and toppled off the stack of books he stood on. The real surprise came in potions. The class took place in the dungeons, which immediately made Harry feel at home. The chill, damp air and stone walls reminded him of the Addams family crypt. Professor Snape, the sallow-faced teacher who had stared at Harry during the welcoming feast, began the class with roll call. Like Flitwick, he paused at Harry's name. "Ah, yes," he said softly. "Harry Potter. Our new celebrity." "Potter Addams," Harry corrected automatically. Snape's black eyes narrowed. "Addams," he repeated, something like recognition flickering across his face. "As in the Addams family?" "Yes, sir," Harry confirmed. "They raised me after my parents died." A strange expression crossed Snape's face, something between shock, disgust, and a grudging reappraisal. The potion's master seemed momentarily lost for words, a condition Harry suspected was rare. Recovering, Snape launched into a speech about the subtle science and exact art of potion-making, describing bottling fame, brewing glory, and even putting a stopper in death. "Potter," he said suddenly. "What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Hermione's hand shot into the air, but Harry answered promptly, "The draught of living death, sir. A powerful sleeping potion. Grandmama uses it for family reunions when Great-Uncle Crimp gets too enthusiastic with his battle-axe." Snape's lips parted slightly in surprise. "Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar?" "In the stomach of a goat, sir. The Addams family keeps several in the medicine cabinet next to the arsenic antidote." "What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane?" "They're the same plant, also called aconite," Harry replied. "Mother Morticia grows it in the conservatory. Beautiful purple flowers, highly poisonous. She says it's important to know your toxins intimately." Absolute silence had fallen over the dungeon. Snape stared at Harry with an unreadable expression. "It appears," he finally said, "that someone has actually bothered to open a book before coming to my class." His gaze swept over the other students. "Well? Why aren't you all copying that down?" As the lesson progressed, Snape set them to mixing a simple potion to cure boils. Harry worked methodically, using techniques Grandmama had taught him. He crushed the snake fangs instead of cutting them, releasing more venom into the mixture, a trick that wasn't in the textbook but that Grandmama swore improved the potency. Snape swept around the room criticizing everyone, but when he reached Harry's cauldron, he paused. The potion was precisely the shade of pink described in the book, and the characteristic smoke was rising in perfect spirals. "You crushed the fangs," Snape observed. "It wasn't a question." "Yes, sir. It releases more of the active compounds. And you're stirring counterclockwise every 7th rotation because it stabilizes the volatile elements while maintaining potency," Harry explained. "Grandmama always says a stable poison is a reliable poison." Snape's eyebrows rose slightly. "Your grandmother taught you potions?" "Addams' grandmama, sir. Not by blood, but by upbringing. She's been brewing for over a century." Snape stared at him for another long moment before moving on without comment, neither criticism nor praise. But Harry noticed the professor watched him more closely for the remainder of the lesson. As they left the dungeon afterward, Ron was incredulous. "How did you know all that stuff? And how did you get away without Snape taking points?" "He hates all Gryffindors. Grandmama's been teaching me potions since I was 5, Harry explained. Her recipes are a bit more adventurous than the school curriculum, though. Last year we made a potion that temporarily brings taxidermied animals back to life. Great-Uncle Fester's stuffed crocodile escaped and we spent 3 days tracking it through the swamp." Ron and Hermione exchanged the now familiar look that said they weren't sure whether to believe him. Defense against the dark arts proved disappointing. Harry had been looking forward to this class, curious about how the wizarding world categorized dark magic. But Professor Quirrell, with his ridiculous turban and persistent stammer, seemed afraid of his own subject. More concerning was the headache that plagued Harry throughout the lesson. His scar burned whenever Quirrell turned his back, a sensation Harry found both puzzling and irritating. "Something's wrong with that teacher," he hissed quietly to Sylvester during a moment when Quirrell was writing on the blackboard. "He smells like fear and something else, something rotten." The snake shifted in his pocket. "Like the man in the graveyard years ago?" Harry frowned, remembering the strange encounter his family had mentioned to Dumbledore. "Maybe. But stronger now." After class, Harry lingered behind, watching Quirrell straighten his papers with trembling hands. The professor looked up, startled to find Harry still there. "I've forgotten something, Mr. P.P. Potter," he stammered. "It's Potter Addams," Harry corrected. "And no, sir. I was just wondering why you're afraid of your own subject." Quirrell's pale face twitched. Afraid? And nonsense. Just cc cautious. My family says fear is only useful if it sharpens your senses," Harry continued, watching the professor carefully. "Otherwise, it's just a weakness others can exploit." For a split second, something cold and calculating flashed in Quirrell's eyes, a look utterly at odds with his twitchy, fearful demeanor. "W.I.'s family," he managed. "The A. Addams, yes. Old M magic there." "Very old," Harry agreed. "They taught me that appearances can be deceiving." Quirrell's hand moved toward his turban in what appeared to be a nervous gesture, but stopped midway. "I indeed. And now run along, Mr. P. Potter. Don't W want to be late." Harry left, but the encounter strengthened his suspicion that Professor Quirrell was hiding something significant behind his stammering facade. He whispered once he was alone in a corridor, "I think we need to keep an eye on Professor Quirrell." The disembodied hand gave a thumbs up from his pocket. The weekend brought Harry's first opportunity to properly explore the castle without the constraints of classes. Ron and Hermione had reluctantly agreed to join his expedition, though Hermione insisted they finish their homework first, a condition that made Ron groan dramatically. "But it's only the first weekend," he protested as they sat in the common room, Harry completing a potions essay with surprising enthusiasm. "Mother Morticia says education is a privilege that shouldn't be squandered," Harry replied, quoting one of her frequent admonishments. "Besides, Grandmama would skin me alive if I failed potions." Possibly literally, she needs human skin for a special solstice ritual. Ron and Hermione had grown somewhat accustomed to these disturbing references, though Hermione still occasionally gave Harry concerned looks when he mentioned particularly macabre family traditions. With their homework completed by early afternoon, the trio set out to explore Hogwarts' many secrets. Harry led them confidently through corridors and up staircases, navigating with the mental map he'd developed during his dawn tour with nearly headless Nick. "How do you already know the castle so well?" Hermione asked, impressed despite herself when Harry revealed a hidden passage behind a tapestry on the 4th floor. "The Addams mansion has 17 secret passages, 23 hidden rooms, and a dungeon that occasionally rearranges itself," Harry explained. "I've been mapping hidden spaces since I was 6. Compared to home, Hogwarts is practically straightforward." Their exploration eventually brought them to the 3rd-floor corridor on the right-hand side, the very one Dumbledore had warned was forbidden at the start of term feast. "We shouldn't be here," Hermione hissed, grabbing Harry's sleeve as he reached for a door handle. "Dumbledore said it was dangerous." "That's precisely why we should investigate," Harry replied reasonably. "The Addams family rule number 17, always explore forbidden areas, they contain the most interesting things." "Your family has numbered rules?" Ron asked, distracted. 666 of them, Harry confirmed. "Though the last one is just, in case of doubt, cause chaos." Before Hermione could protest further, the door Harry was touching swung open of its own accord. Cautiously, the three first-years peered into the darkness beyond. A low, rumbling growl greeted them. As their eyes adjusted, they made out an enormous three-headed dog filling the entire space between ceiling and floor. All three mouths were drooling, 6 eyes staring at them with obvious hunger. "Brilliant!" Harry exclaimed while Ron and Hermione froze in terror. "It's just like Cousin Itt's pet, only bigger." The dog, seemingly confused by Harry's enthusiasm rather than fear, tilted all three heads simultaneously. "Hello there," Harry continued, stepping forward despite Hermione's frantic attempts to pull him back. "Aren't you magnificent?" To Ron and Hermione's astonishment, Harry extended his hand, palm up, toward the creature. The middle head sniffed cautiously, then gave his fingers a tentative lick. "Harry," Ron whispered urgently, "have you gone mental? That's a Cerberus." "I know," Harry replied calmly, now scratching behind one of the beast's ears, causing the corresponding leg to thump against the floor. "Grandmama would love him. Look, he's even standing on a trapdoor. Classic guardian behavior." Hermione, finally finding her voice, stammered, "A trapdoor? It's guarding something." "Obviously," Harry said, now giving attention to the right head, which had grown jealous. "The Addams family keeps similar security measures for our vault of cursed artifacts. Though our guardian is a chimera, not a Cerberus. Much more temperamental." "We need to get out of here," Ron insisted. "Before it decides you're not as tasty as whatever it's guarding." Harry sighed but complied, giving each head a final pat before backing toward the door. "See you later," he told the dog, which whined as they left. Safely back in the corridor, Hermione rounded on Harry. "How did you do that? It should have torn us to pieces." Harry shrugged. "Animals like me. Mother Morticia says it's because I respect their murderous potential instead of fearing it." "But what's it guarding?" Ron wondered, still pale from the encounter. "Something valuable or dangerous," Harry mused. "Probably both, the best things usually are." Their explorations concluded without further death-defying moments, though Harry did make friends with Peeves the poltergeist by suggesting several creative pranks that left the mischievous spirit cackling with delight and promising to spare the Addams boy from future torments. That evening, Harry wrote his first letter home, detailing his sorting, classes, and discovery of the Cerberus. He handed the lengthy parchment to the enormous, slightly menacing barn owl Cousin Itt had lent the family. "Take this to Addams Manor," he instructed the bird. "And wait for their reply. Mother Morticia will want to respond immediately when she hears about the three-headed dog." The owl gave a low, ominous hoot and launched from the Ollery window, its wingspan impressive even among the larger school owls. Harry's prediction proved correct. The next morning, the same owl returned during breakfast, carrying a black envelope sealed with red wax impressed with the Addams family crest, a stylized letter, surrounded by what appeared to be tentacles. The unusual delivery attracted curious stares from students at all 4 house tables. Harry opened it eagerly, unfolding several pages of elegant script on black parchment, Morticia's distinctive stationery. "Dearest Harry, your letter brought us such delightful news. Gomez and I are thrilled to hear of your sorting into Gryffindor. Your birth parents would be so proud, as are we. The entire family gathered in the graveyard last night to celebrate by moonlight. Your encounter with the Cerberus sounds absolutely marvelous. Three-headed canines are such misunderstood creatures. Cousin Itt suggests offering it fresh liver as a treat, his own pet responds quite favorably to this. Regarding what it might be guarding, Gomez has a theory. He recalls rumors in certain exclusive circles about Nicholas Flamel entrusting Dumbledore with a particularly valuable alchemical creation recently. Wednesday and Pugsley miss you terribly. The mansion is painfully quiet without your trio's usual explosions and screams. Wednesday has taken to practicing her crossbow skills on the garden statues, while Pugsley has been suspiciously well behaved, which concerns me greatly. Uncle Fester asks if you've managed to create any electrical disturbances yet. He's enclosed a small device of his own invention that he claims will help you communicate more directly, should the need arise. I've inspected it thoroughly and removed the more volatile components, but I suggest using it outdoors nonetheless. Grandmama was delighted to hear about your potion's success. She's included a page of advanced brewing tips that she insists will knock the bat out of that dungeon dweller. I've taken the liberty of removing her suggestion about substituting human fingernails in the swelling solution. Some adaptations are best left for home brewing. Do write again soon, darling. The family séance last night suggested you might encounter something significant hidden in a mirror soon. Cryptic, but séances often are. With all our love and a touch of delicious darkness, Mother Morticia P.S. Gomez insists I remind you about the emergency port key in your trunk's false bottom. Simply tap it 3 times and say, "Cara mia," if you find yourself in genuinely mortal peril. Harry smiled as he finished reading, already composing his reply in his mind. Ron, who had been trying to read over his shoulder, looked perplexed. Why is the parchment black? And what's that bit about human fingernails? Mother Morticia doesn't believe in wasting white paper when black is so much more elegant, Harry explained. And Grandmama's brewing techniques are sometimes a bit creative. Hermione, sitting across from them, had caught glimpses of the letter as well. Did that say Nicholas Flamel? The alchemist? I've read about him. He's mentioned in historical magical innovations through the ages. Famous for what? Harry asked, his interest piqued. I can't remember exactly, Hermione admitted, frustration evident in her voice. I only read about him briefly. We should find out, Harry decided. If he's connected to whatever that dog is guarding, it must be extraordinary. The trio's investigation into Nicholas Flamel added purpose to their exploration of Hogwarts over the following weeks. Between classes, homework, and research sessions in the library, Harry continued to navigate the complex social dynamics of being both the boy who lived and the adopted son of the infamous Addams family. Most Gryffindors had adjusted to Harry's unusual perspectives and occasional disturbing comments, chalking it up to celebrity eccentricity. The Weasley twins, in particular, had taken a shine to him, frequently asking for Addams family wisdom when planning their pranks. Relations with the other houses varied. Hufflepuffs were generally friendly but wary, especially after Harry casually mentioned during herbology that the Addams family cultivated several plants classified as level 5 dangerous in their home greenhouse. Professor Sprout had been equal parts horrified and fascinated, demanding details about their growing techniques. Ravenclaws respected Harry's surprising knowledge in various subjects, though they found his logic sometimes difficult to follow. It's not that I don't understand the theory, Harry had explained to a confused Terry Boot during Charms, it's just that the Addams approach values spectacular failure over mediocre success. Uncle Fester says you learn more from explosions than from textbooks. Slytherins, led by Draco Malfoy, maintained a complicated attitude toward Harry. Draco himself seemed torn between his family's apparent prejudice against Gryffindors and his fascination with the Addams name, which even he recognized carried significant weight in certain dark magic circles. This ambivalence came to a head during their first flying lesson. As the Gryffindors and Slytherins assembled on the training grounds, Draco had been boasting about his flying skills when Neville Longbottom lost control of his broom, fell, and broke his wrist. After Madame Hooch escorted Neville to the hospital wing, Draco discovered Neville's remembrall in the grass. Look what the idiot dropped, he sneered, holding up the glass ball. Maybe if he'd given this a squeeze, he'd have remembered to fall on his fat backside. Give it here, Malfoy, Harry said quietly. Instead of backing down, Draco smirked. I think I'll leave it somewhere for Longbottom to find. How about up a tree? He mounted his broom and took off. Harry, ignoring Hermione's warnings about getting expelled, grabbed his own broom. Harry, no. Hermione shouted. You don't even know how to fly yet. I've been flying since I was 7, Harry replied. Cousin Slash taught me on a 19th-century Hungarian horntail broomstick with actual dragon scales. This school broom is practically docile in comparison. Before she could respond, Harry kicked off, rising smoothly into the air with a natural grace that surprised everyone watching. He pulled level with Draco 20 feet up, who looked stunned at Harry's competence. "Give it back, Draco," Harry said calmly, "or I'll knock you off your broom." "Oh yeah?" Malfoy sneered, though he looked less confident now. "The Addams family believes in direct solutions to problems," Harry continued conversationally. "Usually involving gravity, sharp objects, or both." Something in Harry's green eyes, a calm certainty rather than anger, made Draco hesitate. "Fine," he said suddenly. "Catch it if you can." He threw the Remembrall hard toward the castle wall. Harry reacted instantly, flattening himself against the broomstick and streaking after the glass ball. The wind whistled in his ears as he gained on it, stretching out his hand. Feet from the castle wall, his fingers closed around the Remembrall, and he pulled up hard, executing a tight turn that brought him parallel to the stone surface, missing collision by inches. He descended to thunderous applause from the Gryffindors. Even some Slytherins looked impressed, though they quickly hid it when Draco landed beside them, face flushed with humiliation. Harry Potter. Professor McGonagall was running toward them, face tight with shock. "Never, in all my time at Hogwarts, it's Potter Addams, Professor," Harry corrected automatically. "How dare you, might have broken your neck, but I didn't," Harry pointed out reasonably. "The Addams family has a long tradition of death-defying feats. Uncle Fester calls it flirting with mortality." McGonagall seemed momentarily lost for words, a condition Harry was beginning to recognize as a common reaction to his Addams-influenced perspectives. "Follow me, now," she finally managed. To everyone's surprise, instead of punishment, Harry found himself introduced to Oliver Wood and drafted onto the Gryffindor Quidditch team as their new seeker. McGonagall, despite her stern demeanor, couldn't quite hide her satisfaction at finding such talent for her house team. "Your father would have been proud," she told Harry as they returned to the castle. "He was an excellent Quidditch player himself." "Really?" Harry brightened. Mother Morticia mentioned he was athletic, but she didn't know about Quidditch specifically. McGonagall's expression softened slightly. "Your adoptive family, they've told you about James and Lily?" "As much as they could learn," Harry confirmed. "They've been trying to piece together my birth parents' story for years. The Addams family believes in honoring all bloodlines." "I see," McGonagall said thoughtfully. "Well, perhaps sometime you'd like to hear about them from those who knew them personally." "I'd like that very much, Professor." Halloween arrived with great excitement throughout Hogwarts. The castle was decorated with floating pumpkins, live bats, and animated skeletons that Harry found charming, but lacking the personal touch of the Addams family crypt keeper. Harry had declined Morticia's offer to return home for the holiday, not wanting to miss his first Halloween feast at Hogwarts. However, he did maintain certain Addams traditions, including wearing a special amulet Grandmama had sent to better commune with the spirits when the veil between worlds thins. The feast was underway, the great hall resplendent with decorations, when Professor Quirrell burst through the doors, terror written across his face. "Troll," he gasped. "In the dungeons, thought you ought to know." He then collapsed in a dead faint. As panic erupted, Harry remained oddly calm, fingering the amulet around his neck. "Interesting," he murmured. "Trolls rarely venture into human structures without compulsion. Who cares why it's here?" Ron hissed as Dumbledore ordered prefects to lead students back to their dormitories. "Trolls are deadly. Only if you don't know how to handle them," Harry replied. "Uncle Fester wrestled a mountain troll in Norway once. Says the key is to aim for the—" He stopped abruptly, a sudden thought occurring to him. "Ron, where's Hermione?" Ron's face paled. "She's been in the girls' bathroom all afternoon, crying. Parvati said she overheard some Ravenclaws making fun of her and, she doesn't know about the troll," Harry realized. "We need to find her." They slipped away from the Gryffindor line and hurried toward the bathroom Hermione was likely to be in. As they rounded a corner, they caught a whiff of a foul stench, like old socks and public toilets that hadn't been cleaned in weeks. And then they saw it, 12 feet tall, granite gray skin, a lumpy body like boulders stuck together, dragging a massive wooden club. It was shuffling into a room off the hall. "That's the girls' bathroom," Harry whispered. A high-pitched scream confirmed their worst fears. "Hermione," they shouted together, rushing forward. The scene inside was chaotic, broken stalls, shattered porcelain, and Hermione Granger shrinking against the wall in terror as the troll advanced on her, knocking sinks off the walls as it went. "Confuse it!" Harry yelled to Ron, grabbing a broken tap and throwing it against the wall. The troll stopped, blinking stupidly, then turned its ugly snout toward Harry, deciding he was an easier target than the girl. "Hey, pea-brain!" Ron shouted from the other side of the chamber, throwing a metal pipe that hit the troll's shoulder. As the creature turned toward Ron, Harry did something that was either very brave or very foolish. He took a running jump and managed to fasten his arms around the troll's neck from behind. The troll couldn't feel Harry hanging there, but it certainly noticed when Harry's wand, still clutched in his hand, went straight up one of its nostrils. Howling with pain, the troll twisted and flailed, with Harry clinging on for dear life. Hermione had sunk to the floor in fright. Ron pulled out his own wand and, with more instinct than knowledge, cried out the first spell that came to mind, Wingardium Leviosa. The troll's club flew from its grasp, rose high into the air, turned slowly over, and dropped, with a sickening crack, onto its owner's head. The troll swayed on the spot and then fell flat on its face with a thud that made the whole room tremble. Harry got to his feet, breathless but unharmed. "Well done, Ron." "Perfect timing." Ron stood frozen, his wand still raised, staring at what he'd done. Hermione spoke first, her voice small. "Is it dead?" "I don't think so," Harry said, bending to retrieve his wand from the troll's nose. "Just knocked out." He wiped the wand on the troll's trousers, examining the gray lumps clinging to it. "Fascinating. Troll mucus has magical properties, you know. Grandmama uses it in her revitalizing face cream." This deeply disturbing comment was interrupted by the arrival of Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell, drawn by the commotion. McGonagall looked ready to breathe fire at the sight of the unconscious troll and 3 first-years standing over it. Before she could explode, Hermione shocked them all by taking the blame, claiming she'd gone looking for the troll because she'd read about them and thought she could handle it. Harry and Ron tried to keep their faces neutral, though Harry was impressed by Hermione's convincing lie, a skill the Addams family considered essential to a well-rounded education. In the end, Hermione lost 5 points for Gryffindor, while Harry and Ron each earned 5 for their sheer dumb luck in defeating the troll. As they returned to Gryffindor Tower, Harry noticed that Professor Snape was limping significantly, with what appeared to be a bloody tear in his robes. "I think," Harry said thoughtfully as they climbed the marble staircase, "that our potions master may have been checking on whatever that 3-headed dog is guarding when the troll was set loose." "Set loose?" Hermione repeated, having been filled in on their earlier discovery. "You think it was deliberate?" Harry nodded. "A distraction. And Professor Quirrell was the one who alerted everyone, yet I noticed he headed away from the dungeons afterward, not toward them." "You think Quirrell?" Ron began. "I'm keeping my options open," Harry replied. "But there's definitely more happening than meets the eye." The weeks leading up to Christmas were filled with increasing intrigue. Harry, Ron, and Hermione continued their research into Nicholas Flamel without success, though Harry frequently sent and received letters from the Addams family, who were conducting their own investigations through less conventional channels. One such letter arrived during breakfast on a snowy December morning. "Harry darling, Grandmama consulted with her friend, the spirit of Cassandra Trelawney, regarding Nicholas Flamel. While the séance was frustratingly vague, she did mention eternal life in a stone. Gomez believes this confirms his theory about the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary alchemical creation capable of producing the elixir of life and transforming metals into gold. If this is indeed what lurks beneath the paws of your charming Cerberus friend, it would explain the security measures. Such an item would be coveted by many, particularly those seeking to escape death's embrace, a foolish endeavor. Death should be welcomed as an old friend, not avoided. The family will be disappointed that you're staying at Hogwarts for Christmas, but we understand your desire to experience a proper wizarding holiday. We've sent your gifts separately, with appropriate warning labels this time, after the incident with the ministry owl who delivered Wednesday's birthday present and returned missing several feathers and with a peculiar twitch. Do be careful around Professor Quirrell. Your description of his dual nature concerns us. The Addams family has encountered possession cases before, and they often present with similar inconsistencies of character. All our love, Mother Morticia. P.S. Uncle Fester suggests checking Quirrell's turban. In his experience, unusual headwear often conceals unusual secrets. The Philosopher's Stone, Hermione breathed when Harry shared this revelation. That makes perfect sense. What exactly is it? Ron asked. It's a legendary substance with astonishing powers, Hermione explained. It can transform any metal into pure gold and produces the elixir of life, which makes the drinker immortal. Immortal? Ron repeated. You mean, you never die? You never die, Hermione confirmed. No wonder someone's trying to steal it, Harry mused. Though immortality isn't all it's cracked up to be, according to great-grandfather Addams. He achieved a form of it through a ritual in 1749 and now complains constantly about how dull the centuries become after the first two. Hermione and Ron exchanged their now familiar, is he serious, glances. So who would want immortality badly enough to try stealing it from under Dumbledore's nose? Ron wondered. Harry's hand unconsciously moved to his lightning scar. Someone who's afraid of death. Someone who was defeated but not destroyed. Someone like Voldemort. Ron winced at the name, but Hermione looked thoughtful. You think you know who is behind this? But how could he get into Hogwarts? Possession, Harry said simply. Mother Morticia's letter confirms my suspicion. I think Voldemort is possessing Professor Quirrell. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold. Harry woke to Ron's excited voice. Harry, wake up. Presents. Harry sat up, putting on his glasses. At the foot of his bed was a pile of packages. He'd expected gifts from the Addams family, but was surprised to see others as well. What did you expect, turnips? Ron laughed, already tearing into his own presents. Harry's gifts from the Addams family were typically eccentric, a hand-knitted sweater from Grandmama that occasionally writhed of its own accord, a selection of mildly dangerous potions ingredients from Morticia, carefully labeled and sealed, a set of enchanted throwing knives from Gomez that always returned to their owner, for emergencies only, old man. A suspicious-looking jack-in-the-box from Uncle Fester that Harry decided to open outdoors, and a joint gift from Wednesday and Pugsley. A beautifully illustrated book titled, Creative Curses for the Curious Child, with a note saying, these aren't in your standard curriculum. Use wisely. From Ron's mother, he received a hand-knitted emerald green sweater and homemade fudge. Hermione had given him a luxury eagle feather quill. Hagrid sent a roughly carved wooden flute. The final package was light and wrapped in plain paper. Inside was something fluid and silvery gray that slipped through Harry's fingers like water but felt like cloth. I've heard of those, Ron gasped, dropping the box of chocolate frogs Hermione had given him. If that's what I think it is, they're really rare, and really valuable. What is it? Harry asked, picking up the shimmering cloth. It's an invisibility cloak, Ron said with awe. Try it on. Harry threw the cloak around his shoulders, and Ron gave a yell. It is. Look down. Harry looked down at his feet, but they were gone. He dashed to the mirror and saw only his head suspended in midair, his body completely invisible. He pulled the cloak over his head, and his reflection vanished completely. There's a note. Ron said suddenly. A note fell out of it. Harry pulled off the cloak and seized the letter. Written in narrow, loopy handwriting he didn't recognize were the words, Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well. A very Merry Christmas to you. There was no signature. This was my father's, Harry said softly, running his fingers over the silky material. James Potter's. That night, after the Christmas feast, Harry couldn't sleep. The invisibility cloak called to him, an invitation to explore Hogwarts without constraints. After everyone else was asleep, he slipped out of bed, wrapped the cloak around himself, and set off to wander the castle freely. His nocturnal exploration eventually led him to an unused classroom. Pushing the door ajar, he saw something that drew him in like a magnet, a magnificent mirror, as high as the ceiling, with an ornate gold frame, standing on 2 clawed feet. An inscription was carved around the top, Erist stra eru oit ube kafru oit onwosi. Harry stepped in front of the mirror, expecting to see himself, invisible with the cloak, but instead saw a crowd of people standing behind his reflection. He whirled around, but the room was empty. He looked back at the mirror. There, reflected beside him, were at least 10 people. Looking more closely at the 2 standing nearest his reflection, Harry felt his heart leap into his throat. The woman was beautiful, with dark red hair and green eyes exactly like his. She was crying, smiling at the same time. The tall, thin, black-haired man standing next to her put his arm around her. He wore glasses, and his hair was untidy, sticking up at the back just like Harry's. "Mom," he whispered. "Dad?" They smiled and waved, and slowly, Harry looked into the faces of the other people in the mirror. He saw other pairs of green eyes like his, other noses like his, a little old man who had Harry's knobbly knees. He was looking at his family, his birth family, for the first time in his life. But as he watched, the image shifted and changed. Joining the Potters in the mirror were the Addamses, Morticia and Gomez standing proudly alongside James and Lily, Wednesday and Pugsley next to Harry, Uncle Fester and Grandmama in the background, Lurch and Thing completing the unusual assembly. All of them together, both his families, united, smiling at him with love and pride. Harry stared transfixed at the image, unable to tear his eyes away. He might have stood there all night if not for a quiet voice behind him. "Back again, Harry." Harry turned to find Albus Dumbledore sitting on one of the desks by the wall. In his excitement at discovering his families in the mirror, he hadn't noticed the headmaster's arrival. I didn't see you, sir." "Strange how nearsighted being invisible can make you," said Dumbledore, smiling. "So, you, like hundreds before you, have discovered the delights of the Mirror of Erist. Is that what it's called, sir?" "Yes. Do you realize what it shows us all?" Harry thought for a moment, remembering the inscription, then understanding dawned. "It shows us what we want, our deepest desire." "Indeed," said Dumbledore. "You, who have known 2 families, one lost to you in death, one who claimed you as their own, see them united, together, complete." Harry nodded, surprised by Dumbledore's perceptiveness. "It's beautiful. The happiest man on earth would be able to use the Mirror of Erist like a normal mirror. He would look into it and see himself exactly as he is," Dumbledore explained. "It shows neither knowledge nor truth. Men have wasted away before it, entranced by what they have seen, or been driven mad, not knowing if what it shows is real or even possible." He laid a hand on Harry's shoulder. "The mirror will be moved to a new home tomorrow, Harry, and I ask you not to go looking for it again. It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live." Harry nodded, but hesitated before turning away from the mirror. "Sir. You never told me what you see when you look in the mirror." I see myself holding a pair of thick, woolen socks," Dumbledore replied with a smile. "One can never have enough socks. Another Christmas has come and gone and I didn't get a single pair. People will insist on giving me books." As Harry returned to his dormitory, he reflected that this had been an unsatisfying answer. Clearly, Dumbledore had been less than truthful, an Addams family trait Harry recognized well, having been taught the art of creative misdirection by Gomez himself. The spring term saw tensions escalating around the Philosopher's Stone. Harry had connected several worrying dots: Quirrell's increasingly nervous behavior, Snape's apparent antagonism toward the defense professor, and a suspiciously specific conversation Harry overheard between the two men, with Snape questioning Quirrell about his loyalty. "I still think Snape's the one after the stone," Ron insisted as they discussed these developments in a quiet corner of the library. "No, it's Quirrell," Harry maintained. "Snape suspects him too, that's why he's been threatening him." "But Snape hates you," Ron pointed out. "He's always looking for reasons to take points from Gryffindor." "Hate is a strong word," Harry mused. "I think it's more complicated. He knew my parents somehow, the way he looks at me sometimes, it's like he's seeing someone else." Their debate was interrupted when Hagrid appeared, hiding something behind his back. After some suspicious behavior, they followed him to his hut, where he reluctantly revealed his latest acquisition, a dragon egg. "But Hagrid," Hermione protested, "your house is made of wood." Hagrid was unmoved by this logical objection, too entranced by the prospect of raising a dragon. "Actually," Harry said thoughtfully, "Cousin Ignatius Addams raised a Ukrainian iron belly in the family conservatory for nearly a year before it burned down the east wing. Mother Morticia could probably offer some advice on fireproofing charms." In the end, they convinced Hagrid to let Ron's brother Charlie take the newly hatched dragon, Norbert, to the Romanian reserve. Unfortunately, their midnight handoff on the astronomy tower resulted in detention when they were caught by Filch. Their punishment took the form of a night in the Forbidden Forest with Hagrid, tracking whatever was killing unicorns. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Draco Malfoy, who had also been caught out after curfew, were split into two groups, Harry and Draco with Fong the Boarhound, Ron and Hermione with Hagrid. "The forest?" Malfoy repeated, unable to keep the fear out of his voice. "We can't go in there at night, there's all sorts of things in there, werewolves, I heard." "That's the point," Harry said cheerfully. "Great Uncle Lupus would be thrilled. He collects werewolf claws." Draco stared at him. "Your family is completely mental." "Thank you," Harry replied, taking it as a compliment. As they ventured deeper into the forest, following a trail of unicorn blood, Malfoy grew increasingly nervous. Harry, by contrast, felt oddly at home among the ancient trees and eerie sounds. "Reminds me of the Addams family swamp," he commented. "Though with fewer carnivorous plants, which is slightly disappointing." "Will you shut up about your freakish family?" Draco hissed. "Something could be listening." "I hope so," Harry replied. "Meeting new creatures is always educational." They soon came upon the unicorn, dead on the forest floor. Before they could alert Hagrid, a hooded figure crawled across the ground like a stalking beast and began to drink the unicorn's blood. Malfoy screamed and bolted with Fong, but Harry stood his ground, watching the figure with more curiosity than fear. As the cloaked shape raised its head and looked directly at him, Harry felt a piercing pain in his scar unlike anything he'd experienced before. From behind him came the sound of hooves, and a centaur charged at the figure, which fled into the darkness. The centaur introduced himself as Firenze and insisted on carrying Harry back to Hagrid, warning cryptically about the significance of unicorn blood. "The blood of a unicorn will keep you alive, even if you are an inch from death, but at a terrible price," Firenze explained. "You have slain something pure and defenseless to save yourself, and you will have but a half-life, a cursed life, from the moment the blood touches your lips. So whoever killed the unicorn is desperately trying to stay alive," Harry reasoned. "Waiting for something better, like the Philosopher's Stone, which would provide true immortality." Firenze looked impressed by Harry's deduction. "Can you think of nobody who has waited many years to return to power, who has clung to life, awaiting their chance?" "Voldemort," Harry said simply. "He's here, isn't he? In the forest. Or rather, using someone else to do his dirty work." "You are wiser than many twice your age, Harry Potter," Firenze said gravely. "The forest is not safe for you. Not with what hunts here." Back in the Gryffindor common room, Harry shared his experience with Ron and Hermione, confirming their worst fears. Snape doesn't want the stone for himself, Harry concluded. He's trying to prevent Quirrell from getting it for Voldemort. So what do we do? Hermione asked. Harry considered the question. We need to talk to Dumbledore. But first, I need to write to the family. This situation calls for Addams' expertise. The response came the very next day, not a letter, but a visit. Harry was in Transfiguration class when Professor McGonagall entered, looking unusually flustered. Mr. Potter Addams, she said stiffly. You are excused from classes for the remainder of the day. The headmaster wishes to see you immediately regarding visitors. The class erupted in whispers as Harry followed McGonagall, who walked briskly, her lips pressed into a thin line. Your family has arrived, she informed him as they approached the gargoyle guarding Dumbledore's office. Without notice or invitation. That sounds like them, Harry agreed cheerfully. Was it the door? McGonagall's eyebrow twitched. If you're referring to the peculiar portal that materialized in the middle of the Great Hall during lunch, causing several first-years to faint, then yes. When they reached Dumbledore's office, Harry heard raised voices from within, or rather, one exuberant voice that could only belong to Gomez Addams. Magnificent castle, Dumbledore. Simply magnificent. The gargoyles, the moving staircases, the dungeon ambience. Makes our humble abode seem positively modern in comparison. McGonagall knocked once and pushed open the door. Inside, Harry found a scene that brought an immediate smile to his face. Gomez and Morticia Addams stood in the center of the room, Gomez gesturing wildly with a cigar as he admired the office's oddities, while Morticia examined a collection of silver instruments with elegant curiosity. Wednesday and Pugsley had also come, the former engaged in what appeared to be a staring contest with Fawkes the Phoenix, while the latter was attempting to peer into Dumbledore's pensieve before Snape, who was also present, looking thoroughly displeased, pulled him back by the collar. Harry, my boy! Gomez exclaimed upon seeing him. There you are. We received your letter about Voldemort and unicorn blood and came straight away. The door was the fastest option. International portkeys take days to authorize, absolute bureaucratic nightmare. The entire family didn't need to come, Snape said through gritted teeth, still maintaining a grip on Pugsley's collar. Nonsense. Gomez boomed. The boy mentioned mortal peril. That's cause for a family gathering if ever there was one. Harry, darling, Morticia glided forward, embracing him. You look well. School agrees with you. Have you been getting enough darkness, though? You seem almost rosy-cheeked. I've been spending most of my time in the dungeons or the library's restricted section, Harry assured her. The common room is too bright sometimes. Potter has been in the restricted section. Snape's eyes narrowed dangerously. Not technically, Harry clarified. Just pressing my ear against the rope barrier to hear if any of the books are whispering. Mother Morticia, Father Gomez, Harry continued, this is Professor Snape, my potions teacher. He's been helping protect the Philosopher's Stone. Morticia turned her attention to Snape, studying him with newfound interest. A potions master? How delightful. I've been experimenting with some rather unusual ingredients in my greenhouse. Perhaps you could offer your professional opinion on their toxicity levels. Before Snape could respond, Dumbledore cleared his throat. While this unexpected family reunion is touching, I believe we have more pressing matters to discuss. Harry's letter mentioned concerns about Professor Quirrell and potentially Lord Voldemort. Ah yes, possession. Gomez exclaimed. Classic dark arts scenario. Reminds me of Great-Uncle Faustus, had a similar issue in 1837. Ended up with 2 personalities and 3 separate tax forms. Absolute nightmare come April. You believe Professor Quirrell is possessed by Voldemort? Dumbledore asked, his tone serious despite Gomez's flippancy. All the signs are there, Harry explained. The stutter that comes and goes, the turban that he never removes, the pain in my scar when he's near, and now unicorn blood in the forest. He's helping Voldemort stay alive until they can get the stone. A most serious accusation, Dumbledore said gravely. Based on circumstantial evidence. The Addams family has considerable experience with possession cases, Morticia interjected smoothly. We could perform a simple detection ritual. Non-invasive, mostly harmless. Mostly? Snape repeated skeptically. Well, if he is possessed, the entity might react, defensively, Morticia explained. Nothing a good exorcism can't fix. Absolutely not, Snape said firmly. Addams family rituals are not performed at Hogwarts. Actually, Dumbledore said slowly, I'm curious about this detection method. Perhaps a modified version, under supervision. While the adults debated, Wednesday sidled up to Harry. We brought you something, she whispered, slipping a small, cloth-wrapped object into his pocket. From Grandmama's private collection. For emergencies. What is it? Harry whispered back. A vial of purified basilisk venom, she replied matter-of-factly. Instantaneous death if ingested, slightly slower if merely contacted with skin. Use responsibly. Thanks, Wednesday, Harry said sincerely. You always know the perfect gift. Their whispered exchange was interrupted when the office door burst open and Professor McGonagall rushed in, looking alarmed. Albus! Quirrell is gone. His chambers are empty, looks like he left in a hurry. And there have been reports of unusual activity near the third-floor corridor. Dumbledore rose immediately. It seems our hand has been forced. He turned to the Addamses. I must ask you to remain here while we investigate. Nonsense. Gomez declared. The Addams family never shies from adventure. We're coming with you. This is a matter for the faculty, Snape began, but was cut off by an unexpected flash of phoenix fire. Fawkes, who had been watching the proceedings with apparent interest, suddenly burst into flames, circled the room once, and vanished in another flash. Most unusual, Dumbledore murmured. Fawkes rarely intervenes so directly. I believe he's trying to tell us something. A moment later, the phoenix reappeared in another burst of flame, dropping a small, ruby-encrusted sword at Harry's feet before disappearing again. The sword of Gryffindor, Dumbledore breathed. It only appears to a true Gryffindor in a time of need. Splendid! Gomez exclaimed, examining the blade with admiration. Nothing like good steel in a crisis. This is completely unprecedented, McGonagall protested. So is a family appearing through a dimensional portal in the Great Hall, Snape pointed out acidly. Yet here we are. After further debate, a compromise was reached. Dumbledore and Snape would investigate the third-floor corridor immediately, while Harry and the Addams family would remain in the headmaster's office under Professor McGonagall's supervision. We'll join you shortly if confirmation of your suspicions is found, Dumbledore told Harry. The castle will be locked down in the meantime. The moment the office door closed behind them, Gomez turned to his family with a gleam in his eye that Harry recognized all too well. Well, family, he said, twirling his mustache, when has an Addams ever followed safety instructions? Never, the children chorused. Precisely. Gomez declared. Addams Rule number 42, rules are merely suggestions decorated with unnecessary urgency. McGonagall looked alarmed. Mr. Addams, surely you don't intend, Professor, Morticia interjected smoothly, would you care for some tea? I always carry a special blend for stressful situations. She produced an ornate silver flask from her handbag. I will not be distracted by refreshments while you plot to, McGonagall began, but was interrupted by a loud bang from the other side of the room, where Pugsley had accidentally knocked over one of Dumbledore's silver instruments, creating a cloud of purple smoke. In the ensuing confusion, Harry felt Wednesday grab his hand. The door, she whispered. Father brought the key. Sure enough, Gomez had produced the ancient key from his pocket and was discreetly inserting it into what had previously been a perfectly normal bookcase. The wood shimmered and transformed into the familiar plain door of Addams Manor. After you, children, Morticia whispered as McGonagall attempted to dispel the still expanding purple cloud. Quickly now. The door opened not onto the Addams mansion but directly into the third-floor corridor. Harry, Wednesday, Pugsley, Morticia, and Gomez slipped through, closing it behind them just as McGonagall's voice rose in alarm on the other side. Marvelous invention, the door, Gomez said proudly. Takes you wherever you need to go most urgently. They found themselves facing the door guarding Fluffy. Strange sounds emanated from within, not just the expected growling of a three-headed dog, but also music and what sounded like a heated argument. Someone's already inside, Harry whispered. Gomez drew his sword cane, while Morticia produced a wand from her sleeve, long, black, and twisted, unlike any wand Harry had seen at Ollivander's. Children behind us, she instructed calmly. But Mother, Wednesday began. Non-negotiable, Wednesday, Morticia said firmly. You may observe and learn, but not engage unless absolutely necessary. With a flick of Gomez's wrist, the door swung open. Inside, they found a scene of controlled chaos. Fluffy was asleep, lulled by an enchanted harp playing in the corner, while Dumbledore and Snape stood with wands drawn, facing Professor Quirrell, who no longer stuttered and whose turban was unwinding to reveal a second face growing from the back of his head. Ah! The Addams family arrives, the second face hissed, its voice high and cold. How unexpected. Voldemort, I presume. Gomez called cheerfully. Heard so much about you. Your work in the First Wizarding War had a certain dramatic flair we Addamses can appreciate, though your blood supremacy policy lacks nuance. Gomez, Morticia murmured, perhaps antagonizing the Dark Lord isn't the most prudent approach. Nonsense, cara mia. A good entrance line sets the tone for the whole confrontation. Voldemort's red eyes narrowed with fury. You dare mock Lord Voldemort? You, who consort with mudbloods and blood traitors? Who raised the boy meant to be my downfall in your twisted image? Actually, Harry stepped forward, ignoring the adults' attempts to keep him back. They raised me to be myself. Both Potter and Addams. They taught me that fear is a choice, death is an adventure, and family, of any kind, is what truly matters. Sentimental nonsense, Voldemort hissed. Step aside, all of you. The boy is mine to kill, and the stone is mine to take. Harry noticed the trapdoor was already open, suggesting Dumbledore and Snape had arrived only moments before they had. Harry, Dumbledore said calmly, take your family and go. This is not your fight. Not yet. With respect, Professor, Harry replied, drawing his wand, I think it is. It's been my fight since he killed my parents. Such courage, Voldemort mocked. Just like your father. He died first, you know. Putting up a brave fight, but falling all the same. Then your mother, begging for mercy, pleading for your life. You're lying, Harry said quietly. My mother would never beg. She'd face death with dignity. Like an Addams. Something flickered in Voldemort's red eyes, surprise, perhaps, at being contradicted. Quirrell, he commanded. Kill them all and retrieve the stone. What followed was unlike anything Hogwarts had seen in centuries, a magical duel involving not just conventional wizardry, but the unique magical traditions of the Addams family. Quirrell launched a barrage of curses that Dumbledore deflected with elegant precision. Snape moved with surprising agility, his own dark spells flying toward his former colleague with deadly accuracy. But it was Morticia and Gomez who truly shocked everyone present. Morticia's wandwork was unlike traditional magic, her spells manifesting as writhing shadows that engulfed Quirrell's attacks, while Gomez alternated between magical combat and physical lunges with his sword cane, moving with the grace of a fencer and the unpredictability of a madman. Remarkable technique, Dumbledore commented, even as he maintained a powerful shield charm. The ancient umbromancy, shadow magic. I thought it lost to time. Family tradition, Morticia replied modestly, deflecting a curse with a flick of shadows. Mother taught me on my 16th birthday, after I successfully raised my first corpse. Harry, meanwhile, was not idle. Drawing on everything the Addams family had taught him, he focused on a spell Grandmama had shown him, one designed not to attack, but to reveal. Revelio Possidenti, he cried, pointing his wand directly at Quirrell. A beam of sickly green light shot from Harry's wand, striking Quirrell in the chest. The professor's body convulsed as a ghostly, snake-like form began to separate from him, partially exposed by the revealing spell. "What is this magic?" Voldemort shrieked, his spirit form struggling against the spell's pull. "Addams family special," Harry explained, maintaining his concentration despite the strain. "Grandmama uses it to separate unwanted spirits during seances. Works on possession cases too, apparently." Voldemort fought against the magic, causing Quirrell to scream in agony as his body became the battleground between the revealing spell and the Dark Lord's will. "The stone," Voldemort commanded Quirrell. "Get the stone first." Quirrell lurched toward the trapdoor, fighting through the spell's effects. Dumbledore moved to intercept him, but was blocked by a wall of fire Quirrell conjured between them. "Harry!" Wednesday called, tossing him the small vial she'd given him earlier. "Use it." Harry caught the basilisk venom, understanding instantly. He sprinted forward, dodging spells, and launched himself at Quirrell just as the professor was about to descend through the trapdoor. They collided hard, tumbling to the floor. Harry's hands found Quirrell's face, and to everyone's shock, the professor's skin began to blister and burn at his touch. "Aff!" Quirrell screamed, recoiling. "Master, I cannot touch him, it burns." "Then kill him, fool!" Voldemort's face commanded. As Quirrell raised his wand, Harry uncorked the vial of basilisk venom with his teeth and flung the contents at Voldemort's face on the back of Quirrell's head. The effect was instantaneous and horrifying. Where the deadly substance touched, flesh dissolved into agonized ruin. Quirrell's screams reached a crescendo as Voldemort's spirit forcibly tore itself away from its dying host, unwilling to perish with him. "What have you done?" the wraith-like form of Voldemort shrieked as it rose from Quirrell's collapsing body. "Basilisk venom," Harry explained, backing away. "Grandmama says it's one of the few substances that can destroy even the most protected forms of dark magic. Even split souls." Something like fear flickered in the spirit's red eyes. With a howl of rage and frustration, Voldemort's spirit form lunged at Harry, only to be intercepted by a wall of golden fire conjured by Dumbledore. "You cannot touch him, Tom," Dumbledore said firmly. "You know why." The spirit circled, seeking escape, but found itself surrounded. Dumbledore's light magic contained it from one side, while Morticia's shadow magic pressed from another. Snape maintained complex wards blocking its retreat, and Gomez stood ready with what appeared to be a ghost trap of Addams' design. "This isn't over," Voldemort hissed, his form already beginning to dissipate. "I cannot be killed so easily." "No one said it would be easy," Harry replied. "But the Addams family doesn't mind a challenge." With a final, unearthly scream, Voldemort's spirit broke through the ceiling and vanished into the night. Silence fell in the chamber, broken only by the continued gentle playing of the enchanted harp and Fluffy's peaceful snores. "Well," Gomez said brightly, tucking his ghost trap back into his jacket, "that was invigorating. Reminds me of the exorcism at Cousin Balthazar's wedding, though with considerably less projectile vomiting." "Harry," Dumbledore approached, his face grave but his eyes twinkling with something like pride, "that was extremely reckless, extremely brave, and extremely Addams of you." "Thank you, sir," Harry replied, grinning despite his exhaustion. "High praise indeed." Snape was examining what remained of Quirrell with professional detachment. "Basilisk venom," he remarked. "Where would a first-year student obtain such a restricted substance?" All eyes turned to Wednesday, who stared back unflinchingly. "Family heirloom," she said flatly. "We have a collection." "Of course you do," Snape muttered. The aftermath of the confrontation brought significant changes to Hogwarts. The Philosopher's Stone, which Dumbledore had moved to the Mirror of Erist as its final protection, was destroyed by mutual agreement with Nicholas Flamel. Security throughout the castle was enhanced, though the Addams family's unusual entrance had exposed concerning vulnerabilities in the magical defenses. Most significantly, the event transformed Dumbledore's attitude toward Harry's unusual upbringing. The night after the confrontation, he invited the entire Addams family to his office for what became a memorable meeting of minds. "I confess," Dumbledore said, sipping tea while Fawkes-eyed Wednesday warily from his perch, "I had grave concerns about Harry being raised in your unique household." "Understandable," Morticia acknowledged. "The Addams family does tend to inspire concern in those unfamiliar with our ways. But having witnessed your family's bonds, your considerable magical knowledge, and most importantly, the young man Harry has become under your care," Dumbledore continued, "I find my concerns were largely misplaced." High praise from the supreme mugwump himself, Gomez declared, puffing his cigar. "Harry possesses qualities I had not anticipated," Dumbledore admitted. "Resourcefulness, confidence, an unusual perspective on magic that transcends our traditional categories of dark and light, and perhaps most importantly, a capacity for love that not even an unconventional upbringing could diminish." "Love isn't unconventional," Harry pointed out. "Every family has their own way of showing it. The Addamses just happen to include deadly duels, explosive experiments, and the occasional poison immunity training in theirs." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled merrily. "Indeed. I believe I have been reminded of an important lesson, that family comes in many forms, and that our preconceptions often blind us to the most unexpected blessings." The remainder of the school year passed relatively uneventfully, though Harry's reputation underwent a significant transformation. The story of the confrontation with Quirrell and Voldemort spread throughout the school, growing more elaborate with each telling. By the final week of term, the rumor mill had Harry performing ancient blood rituals, commanding an army of shadows, and engaging Voldemort in a sword fight, none of which were entirely accurate, though Harry didn't bother correcting the more entertaining variations. At the end of year feast, Gryffindor won the House Cup after Dumbledore awarded last-minute points to Harry, Ron, and Hermione for their various contributions to thwarting Voldemort. Harry found himself surrounded by celebrating housemates, finally accepted not just as the boy who lived, but as Harry Potter Addams, with all the peculiarities that entailed. As the Hogwarts Express carried them back to London, Harry, Ron, and Hermione shared a compartment, discussing plans for the summer. "You must both visit the mansion," Harry insisted. "The family would love to meet you properly. Wednesday's particularly interested in meeting you, Hermione, something about testing the resilience of the academically gifted. Is that safe?" Hermione asked nervously. "Probably not," Harry admitted cheerfully. "But it'll be educational." "My parents might need some convincing," Ron said. "Dad would be keen, he's always been curious about the Addams family, but Mum might worry." "Mother Morticia can write to them," Harry offered. "She's very persuasive." As the train pulled into platform 9 3/4, Harry spotted the Addams family immediately. They stood out starkly among the colorfully dressed wizarding families, an island of black-clad elegance amid the chaos. "There's my family," Harry said proudly, waving through the window. Ron and Hermione peered out, taking in the sight of Gomez in his pinstriped suit, Morticia in her form-fitting black gown, Wednesday and Pugsley looking like miniature undertakers, and Uncle Fester grinning maniacally as he entertained nearby children by lighting a bulb in his mouth. "They're certainly distinctive," Hermione managed. "They're brilliant," Harry corrected with a grin. "And they're mine." As he stepped off the train and was enveloped in Morticia's embrace, Harry felt the dual currents of his heritage flowing through him, Potter and Addams, magical and macabre, conventional and extraordinary. Dumbledore had been right, family came in many forms, and his was perfectly, peculiarly suited to him. "Welcome home, darling," Morticia murmured, kissing his forehead. "We've prepared a special celebration for your triumphant return. Complete with explosions." Pugsley added enthusiastically. "And a séance to contact that professor you melted," Wednesday said with one of her rare almost smiles. Sounds perfect, Harry replied, truly meaning it. As the unusual family departed the platform, through the barrier rather than the door, in deference to the statute of secrecy, Harry glanced back at Hogwarts Express one last time. His first year had been extraordinary, dangerous, and bizarre, exactly what an Addams would expect from a proper education. And somewhere, watching from a distance, Albus Dumbledore smiled to himself. The boy who lived had indeed grown into someone unexpected, neither the traumatized, malleable child he had feared would emerge from the Dursleys' care, nor the dark wizard he had initially worried the Addams' influence might create. Instead, Harry Potter Addams had become something far more interesting, a young wizard comfortable with both light and shadow, unafraid of death yet valuing life, and possessed of a moral compass that, while unconventionally calibrated, pointed true. It wasn't what Dumbledore had planned, but perhaps, he reflected, it was precisely what the wizarding world would need in the dark times ahead. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.